The little bar is going. All right, so we are officially live on YouTube. You guys can go ahead and start the meeting.
Okay, I would like to call the June 8th, 2020 Town Board Workshop meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford,
Here.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. So again, due to the state of emergency procedures related to coronavirus pandemic, the meeting will not be open for in-person public attendance. However, people may attend virtually. Please visit henrietta.org/wishyouwerehere to view all options for participating in the meeting remotely. Sorry for the slight delay. We are in the process of switching over email servers, and it has caused an issue in terms of the board members having access to the packets. But we decided rather than try to solve that now, we're going to print out the packets. And in the meantime, we'll be hearing the workshop presentation. But before we get to that, I'll note that there is no special permit meeting this Wednesday due to there being no applications. There are no public presentations at the meeting. However, there are two public hearings. One is with regards to the proposed local law to revise the chicken coop provisions in the Henrietta Town Code. And the other is the proposed local law to amend the historic town code to clarify and update provisions relating to town board approval of changes to historic property. So this morning we were in a little bit of a panic because the governor had still not extended the executive order allowing for virtual public meetings. You could have, or excuse me, public hearings. We could have public meetings, but not public hearings. But fortunately this morning, or this late morning, early afternoon, he did finally extend that. So for the chicken coop, that was we'd had the hearing at the previous meeting and decided because we were doing a number of changes that we were going to keep the public hearing open and carry it forward. And then the town code or the update provisions is a newer, that one we just proposed, called for the public hearing at the last meeting. But first up, we have a workshop presentation. It's for the Forest View subdivision, seeker presentation and traffic study. So if you remember, we had notified the planning board that the town board wished to provide input into the seeker process. And the two big things that we were interested in was with regards to traffic and with regards to the drainage runoff. So we have Amy Drake from SRF and Peter Vars from BME, and I don't know who wishes to go first, but we'd like to cover the two presentations. So do we have a volunteer to go first?
You know, I'll go first, Steve, just to do the quick overview and then walk through the drainage real quick and then turn it over to Amy, because I tend to think that might have been the matter of a little bit more concern to the town board. So thank you everyone this evening or this afternoon for your time. As Steve mentioned, I think a lot of you were either in attendance or obviously heard some of the comments, or a majority of the comments that were raised during the public hearing, the planning board public hearing for the preliminary subdivision review of the proposed Forest View subdivision. Ultimately, we will be coming back to this board, hopefully in early July, for a public hearing concerning the open space and conservation easement component of that project. And we can answer any questions you may have on that this evening. But primarily our goal today was to go through the drainage design and then the traffic questions. So with that being said, I'm going to briefly touch base on the drainage and the concern.
Can I interrupt you a second?
Yes.
I should have mentioned, if you're a speaker and you're speaking for the first time or first time in a while, please introduce yourself and your affiliation.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Oh,
Yes. Peter Vars with BME Associates on behalf of the applicant JPE Realty. So a lot of the drainage questions that were raised during the planning board public hearing concerned the drainage that drains towards Ward Hill Road itself. And Becky, if you want, we can try sharing the screens, or do you want to just bring up the exhibits yourself?
Do you want to try sharing the screen? I do not have those
Okay.
open and prepared. If you have them, it might be faster for you to do it.
Okay, let's do it. So let's do this.
all right.
And what screen are people seeing?
The current.
All right, so you are seeing the aerial photo then, correct? Okay, just there we go. So does everybody see the first drainage exhibit?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So the property is this area here. This is the developed property. The development itself is going to be on about 15 acres up at the north end of the property. The two colored areas you see, the blue area, which is the larger area, that is the part of the property that currently drains to the southwest. You can see the green flow arrows in that area illustrating the drainage pattern. So really what we're saying, the majority of this site drains to the south and to the west, where it eventually enters a drainage swale that leads off site. A small portion of the property, approximately 7.5 acres, drains towards Ward Hill Road to the north and to the east. This 7.5 acres portion of the site drains overland, and Ward Hill Road, which is illustrated by this yellow line here, has a roadside drainage ditch. So that collects any runoff that comes from these properties on the south side of Ward Hill Road. It conveys it down the hill to the east to a point about here where there is a storm inlet and then a culvert that takes the stormwater over to the north side of Ward Hill Road, where it continues to the east and then eventually drains to the north. So that's the existing drainage pattern. And what the planning board was getting comments from was from residents along Ward Hill Road talking about how their front yards at times just can have water in them in the drainage ditch not draining. So what we did with the stormwater management plan was to redirect the majority of this drainage area that currently drains to the north and the east, and in turn send it to the south and the west. And that is illustrated by our proposed drainage map.
Pardon me.
Wait, where'd it go? Sorry. There we go. So as you can see on this exhibit as it populates itself, here is the development outline. And as you can see, the area of the red area, the lands that will drain towards Ward Hill Road, has gotten significantly smaller. It's down to 2.5 acres. So we went from 7.5 acres to 2.5 acres that drains to the north and the east. So that's a 67% reduction in the drainage area. It will continue to drain into the roadside ditch and follow the same path off site. From a technical standpoint, and this information was provided to the engineering department, and they asked us to give you these numbers, but it results in a 50% reduction in the rate of runoff or that discharges to this area. And how we achieve this, and this is just to wrap this up, this yellow line here is the proposed storm sewer network that would be constructed with the development. So that's going to collect all of the stormwater runoff from the houses and the roads to be constructed and direct it to a proposed stormwater management facility that is located here, which will has been designed per the DEC and the town standards. And then that will discharge that rate of runoff to the south and the west. The last thing I would add is even though we have redirected this runoff to the south and the west from the north and the east, the discharge rate off-site is still at a lesser rate because that's what the stormwater management facility does. It holds that water and controls it outflow. So really the purpose of the graphics this afternoon was to show through the development and the grading how we're going to reduce the area that drains to Ward Hill Road by 67% and thus reduce the rate of runoff to that same point because of the grading and design we'll do. The last thing I'd point out is those lands that would continue to drain to Ward Hill Road from this development are all going to just be the rear yard areas of these first 8 lots. All of the downspouts and everything are going to connect and go to the road system. So that's the brief overview of the drainage of what we were explaining to the planning board. They have these same exhibits. We'll go through that with them at the planning board meeting next week, and they obviously have all the calculations also. So I can answer any questions about drainage at this time, or we can let Amy go into the traffic portion. I'll let you decide that, Mr. Supervisor.
Why don't we take any questions on the drainage? So, Peter, just to be clear, so everybody understands how this works, although you are hired by the developer to do the study as a licensed professional engineer, you would essentially lose your license if you lied about this stuff. Is that correct?
I wouldn't hope, I've never used those drastic terms, but yes, we have a professional obligation to meet the standards of the DEC in the town. And yes, as professional engineers, our obligation is under New York State education law to administer our profession to the standards of the state. Yes, we answer to them is who we answer to.
Okay. I know not everybody understands how licensed professionals operate. So I apologize for the drastic nature, but I just wanted to make it clear to people and then, so again, we're talking about seeing a significant decrease in the amount of water running down the gullies through the front yards of Ward Hill for any rain event, not just the big rain events. And then the new storm system should also carry the water away from the houses that are between the development and Ward Hill Road. So I don't know that they currently have any issues in their backyards, but if they do, there should actually be better drainage, since in addition to the still overland route, they have the drainage system going back into the pond as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. In the area, I don't know if my cursor shows up that well, but the existing houses along Ward Hill Road here, they drain to the south, but that's what these yellow lines show, is that there's storm sewers that will extend into to the rear of the proposed lots to collect that runoff off the backyards of the existing homes. So it will drain those lands also.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah. How about the properties just west of the development, the proposed development?
And this is that Woodland Park, I believe, right?
Yes. Would this have any effect on them? If you're taking 50%, if you're bringing 50% of the drainage over going southwest?
Sure. Yeah, so the drainage area that drains to the southwest will increase in size. It increases by about 5 acres, which is like a 12% increase from what currently the outline of the blue area is about 42 acres today, and it'll be about 47 acres with the development. But the key to addressing that is the stormwater management facility that would be located right here. It'll be located on the development property. That's the main function of the stormwater management plan. That provides the mitigation for the post-development runoff condition. That will collect the runoff from all of the development site. It holds.
We lost you.
Peter? Peter?
I see him, I don't hear him.
Lips are moving.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, we cannot hear you. So,
Want me to finish what he was saying? Because I think I know where he was going. This is
yeah, go
Chris
ahead. I
Martin.
was gonna do the same, but why don't we have you do that?
Yeah, so basically, even though the tributary area is bigger, and the runoff is a little greater going into the pond, the storm runoff leaving the stormwater management facility is significantly less. So it'll have a positive impact downstream because there'll be less runoff going towards that tributary that goes through Woodbridge Trail. Does that answer your question, Mike?
So basically you're saying even those lots on the west side will be drier now then?
That's correct. There'll be less runoff that's going to be directed towards that stream or ditch that goes through Woodbridge Trail because the stormwater management facility is slowly releasing the runoff.
Right.
You know, I always think of it like a bathtub, right? You got more water coming into it, but if you turn the drain on just a little bit, you get less water going out. So ultimately, there'll be less runoff going downstream because of the stormwater management facility.
It'll be going downstream at a lower rate. So one of the things
That's
that
correct.
does is if the, so again, they're not altering the runoff from that properties to the west. However, as we've seen in some places, when areas upstream start to saturate and dump water quickly, what happens is then downstream, there's no place for the water to go. And so, you know, that absolutely happens along the Red Creek, just north of Town Hall here, where the discharge pipes for the drainage sewers are basically underwater and therefore they'll still discharge, but nowhere near as fast as when they're above water. So, you know, as he noted on there, there's a number of outlets from the drainage from those properties. The fact that we're now reducing the amount of the rate at which the water comes in from upstream should have a positive effect on the runoff from those properties as they discharge into that same drainage gully. And so it should help
Chris Martin.
downstream from here.
Yeah, and it's true for any storm event, just not the 10-year, but the smaller, 1 year and 2 year storm events, all the way up to the 100-year storm events.
Right.
Those ponds are sized to handle all those variety of storms.
Okay, and then
Any other questions?
the other question, we talk about how much it's going to be, how much it'd be reduced and everything. But when you build something, I mean, a house and parking lots and roads and driveways, and it doesn't
Impervious surfaces.
yeah,
Yep.
impervious surfaces. How much does it actually increase because it can't get soaked into the ground? Will those,
Right.
I'm looking at those homes right at the corner of these development on you know,
Well, again, that's the purpose of that storm sewer, is to collect the water off of the impervious surfaces and take it to the pond where it can.
yeah, I'm looking at,
Yeah,
up at the, it would be the east, the southeast corner. You know, those homes behind there.
I mean, the northeast corner along Ward Hill Road, Mike,
Actually, wouldn't it be
drainage area A,
southeast corner?
the south, you mean the southwest corner? I guess there's, the southeast is the high point, and
Right.
everything drains towards the west.
Okay,
So if you look at the red area, drainage area B, for example,
yes,
they take into account when BME ran their calculations, they had taken into account that, you're right, you're going from farm field, you know, or fallow field rather, to houses, but because the area is smaller, there's less runoff that's leaving the site. Now, for drainage area A, you're absolutely right. Where the house pads are and the roadway and everything else, it's got a higher runoff rate, curve number we call it. But when it goes to the pond, that's what the pond's for. So the pond will store all that increase in runoff and let it out slowly through the outfall structure that eventually goes into the drainage ditch along Harvest Hills. Not Harvest Hills, Harvest Ridge, Woodbridge Trail, sorry.
I'm good right now.
We're good.
Probably have more questions later.
I have a couple of questions. The conservation easement for Ward Hill, are some of those homes on bleach fields? Is there any sewer connection being
So
dictated to put in here or anything?
They are currently on septic systems.
Septic.
We have reached out to them to see if they had an interest in connecting in the sewer. No matter what, we're gonna have the developer put in a Y branch so that if sometime in the future, let's say they're happy, because there's a cost to hooking up to sewer for them. Let's say their septic system is doing fine, but it dies 12 years from now. We want it to be able, for them to be able to hook up at that point, so they would be able to run a lateral over to the connection. You know, if there is enough of them who are interested in, and I think it's only like 3 or 4 properties, the ones between the development.
There's 4 altogether.
4 altogether, did you say, Chris?
Yes, that's correct. There's the 4 along Ward Hill, just north of the development.
The sewer lines are over at the Woodridge, or whatever that road is called. So basically, he's bringing that across into the new development. But basically, as he comes in, we were gonna have him put a Y in there so that we could pick up those 4 houses if they decided to. Have you heard back from any of them, yes or no, as to whether they're interested, Chris?
No, we sent the letter out last Thursday, and we have not heard anything at this point.
So we asked them both, are they interested in hooking up to sewer? And then also, are they interested in, we asked for the what we're sort of calling the buffer land in between the new
The
development
conservation easement,
houses, and it'll have a conservation easement over it. We're willing to have that be part of their property. So there's a lot of people who are skeptical about whether conservation easements will stay conserved or whether the town will ever, this way we'd make it their property, but it would have the conservation easement over it. So it would stay open, but in other words, now it's up to them to guarantee, and they could landscape it however they wanted. From a conservation easement, if they wanted to put in a hedgerow, they could put in a hedgerow. If they wanted to put in trees, pines, whatever they wanted to do, from in that regards, that they'd be able to do it. What they couldn't do is put in structures.
They can't build anything.
Yeah.
So for these 4 properties, the developer is looking to put in a Y instead of the laterals unless they want to connect.
If they want to connect, then we would extend the pipe, and they'd still have to do the laterals. The laterals are always paid for by the homeowner.
Okay.
Lateral is the connection from your house to the sewer main, but we would have them put in a bit of the sewer main. if they're not interested in connecting at this time, we would still put in the Y so that they could connect in the future.
Okay. For these 4 properties, I mean, they're getting some of the easement. What kind of land are they being offered in this letter that was sent out?
It
The
was
acreage-
typically,
Just the size,
it was about a 30
Go
to
ahead.
40% increase of the it depends on the property. Do you have any more details on that, Chris?
yeah, I mean, I would say like the smallest property, they would get maybe, you know, a half an acre up to one of the corner lots, which is probably like an acre and a half, maybe, you know, plus or minus.
Okay.
And they may decide not to take it, you know, there will be a slight increase in, potentially a slight increase in property value to be determined, but, you know, anytime you increase the size of your lot, there is that potential. With that said, you know, generally the value of the house, in other words, the fact that it's still one developable site, not multiple sites, plays an effect as well.
Is there a time limit that they have to act on if they want to take this land or if they want to do lateral?
Correct. What did we
Yeah,
give?
we wanted to hear, I'm sorry, Rob, this is Chris Martin again. We wanted to hear before the planning board meeting. So I think we gave them at least to the 16th to talk to us about it. But, you know,
June?
certainly there's always time after that too.
Correct. Again, if they basically say, we are 80% sure, here's a notice, and we'd still have a decision to make. You know, the thing is, we need to hear something, even if it's not a final decision. We can't leave this hanging forever. Because it changes the way we divvy the stuff up. So basically what would happen is if they don't take it, then that land would be added to the houses in the development itself. And they'd be the ones who control what landscaping goes there or not. I do not have an interest in it being yet another green belt that the town has to maintain.
How would the residents find out what it would cost them to do this? Is there an estimate that the planning board has for them? Or is that something they still have to do?
That in terms of connecting into the sewer,
If they want to do sewer.
they would have to call basically a plumber. We're looking at the same thing at my old house, converting from septic to sewer. So we're making that exact same call.
Gotcha.
The planning board really, you know, at best you could give a rough estimate that says it's in this really broad range, but
Gotcha.
it's very dependent on the specific situation. It's not cheap.
No.
But,
I
but the point
They
is,
usually
if
do
you're
a bond for it, or
what's that?
they usually put a bond up for it and people pay into it?
Oh, that's up to the people. No. It's their personal, it's not the town.
All
It's
right.
their personal property. So what happens though is if you've got a failing septic system, it's a heck of a lot cheaper to hook up to the sewer than it is to replace your failing septic system. So what often happens in these scenarios, and again, I made this exact same choice. My old house on the corner of Bailey and John Street, I don't know what it was, 20 years ago, they put in sewer and said, did you want to connect? Our septic system was working fine. So I said, no, it's starting to show its age.
Okay.
So we are exploring the possibility of just removing it and hooking into the sewer at this point.
Gotcha.
You know, so like I said, it's quite a common thing that when the sewer first comes through, people aren't interested in connecting at that time. But when their septic system fails, they're very interested then.
Last question and I'll pass. Of the land that's being offered to these 4 residents, how much land is that total? If you don't have the answer now, no biggie, you can get it to me later, no biggie.
Yeah, I can answer that question. It's about 3.5 acres total, something like that. It's documented on the site plan. It is listed there, the total acreage.
I don't know if you get, that's, Those aren't the site plans, just site plan.
No, okay, I was just,
If you could get at your email, actually, it might be here in very small form.
Yeah, it's like 3.5 acres total that's being offered to those adjoining property owners.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Peter.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions on the drainage? Okay, let's move to traffic.
Okay, hi everyone. This is Amy Dake with SRF Associates. I'm gonna see if I can go ahead and share my screen because I'm guessing that you don't have the traffic study in front of you. Let's see if this works.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, can you see that? There should be a chart in front of you with red, green, and yellow, red, green, and blue lines.
Yep.
Okay, great. So we prepared a traffic study. The latest version of it is dated May 27th. And of course, as you know, with everything that's going on right now with COVID, we can't really go out and do traffic counts because traffic is very much not normal. So in light of that, we wanted to look at 3 intersections for this project, the East Henrietta Road, Ward Hill Road connection, Ward Hill Road, and the subdivision where our driveway is going to connect, opposite Harvest Hills, and then also Ward Hill Road and Pinnacle Road to the east. So the most recent data, unfortunately, that we could find was from the original Harvest Hills subdivision traffic impact study. So they had projected full development traffic volumes, but that was back in 1995. So what we did was we took a look at traffic volumes, historical traffic volumes that have been collected by Monroe County DOT and New York State DOT on all 3 of those roadways. And that's what this chart shows. So the blue line at the bottom is Ward Hill Road, and each of the little dots along the blue line is a data point when traffic volumes were collected by either Monroe County DOT or New York State DOT. And you can see that between 1995 and the most recent data is 2017, traffic volumes have been pretty flat. There hasn't been a whole lot of growth or change. And the same line above that. And so traffic volumes have pretty much stayed steady. The red line is East Henrietta Road. You'll see there was a pretty big increase in traffic around 2003 to 2005 timeframe, and then it dropped back off. And it's actually a little bit lower now in 2018 than it was in 1995. So what we did was we took the projected turning movement counts from the Harvest Hills subdivision report, and we adjusted those traffic volumes to reflect 2020 conditions based on what we saw in terms of growth on those 3 roadways. So we really didn't increase traffic volumes a whole lot, but we did make some adjustments to account for that.
And when you didn't increase accounts, that's talking about what you're doing for the background traffic, not the proposed, correct?
Correct. That's correct. So then, let's see, my computer's locking up a little bit here. If I try to scroll down here, here we go. So this table 2 shows the site generated trips for the proposed subdivision. So we were looking at 46 lots, and those 46 lots would generate, oh, I see a typo here. So the first set of columns should be the morning peak hour. We've got 9 entering trips and 28 exiting. And then the second set should be the PM peak hour. And we have 30 entering the site and 18 exiting during the PM peak. Those are relatively low volumes for a subdivision. You know, just so you know, typically the threshold for actually doing a traffic study says that if you generate more than 100 trips, you should be looking at studying some intersections, and we're well below that. But we did go ahead and look at the 3 intersections and the levels of service. Let's see. And if we scroll down here, this is our capacity analysis table. So the dark green, everything is level of service A, which is the least amount of delay that you can have. And then we do have a few level of service B conditions, which is still an above average condition with very little delay. And so this shows the base conditions that we came up with for 2020. And then the full build condition takes those 2020 base conditions and adds on the traffic from the project. And we really don't see any impact, any significant impact from the project.
The colors look quite different than when we were looking at the intersection for Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
Reds and maybe, if you're lucky, a few yellows.
Yes. So that's pretty much the traffic study in a nutshell. Are there any questions?
So the spike on East Henrietta Road,
Yep.
looked too significant to be just growth. I'm suspecting, I remember for a while, the bridge over 390 on West Henrietta was closed and they were routing traffic up East Henrietta Road. So, I mean, I don't know if you looked into that, but I assume it would be that type of, you know, and that was over a year-long project. So obviously if that happened the year they were taking counts, they would have been elevated. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yep, I'm sure that's what it was. And then a lot of times when traffic is diverted for something like that, it takes a while for people to go back to their old habits of driving the roads that they used to drive previously.
Well, there were actually, we were talking about it, there were 2 different projects about 3 to 4 years apart. So I suspect they just happened to both hit during the measuring times. Because the second larger spike definitely, from my recollection, I shouldn't say definitely, from my recollection, aligns to when that bridge over 390 was closed.
Yep.
So I don't know about the earlier one, but.
Can you remind me again what the speed is on Ward Hill? Is that for like 45?
I don't know. Do you know what the speed limit is on Ward Hill? Amy, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
She looks frozen.
Oh.
I want to see if it
I can, the posted speed limit is 40 miles per hour.
40 miles per hour. Okay.
Right, the traffic study itself should have, I don't know if this one does, but a lot of times they include, well, the last 2 counts, if we have the data from the last 2 counts, that should include the mean speed. Should have some statistics on, well, it might be median, that they give different statistics as to what the
actual speed of travel is?
actual speed of travel.
Okay.
They usually, again, when I had to pay for one on Brooks Road, they were going by the median value because it throws out the couple
Speeders.
really excessive speeders. What was I gonna say? Oh, I don't know if, Peter, you have a copy or someone else has a copy of the study that they might be able to share. But it did a decent job of showing the turn. One of the things we had asked to have it included was a drawing of the, essentially what the expected traffic is and where they're turning as they get to an intersection, right? What volume of cars reach that intersection from that particular direction of travel, what the counts as to how many turn right, how many go straight, how many go left. So that's something worth looking at. You know, you can see it's not a huge impact.
Well, I can see that the numbers, you know, don't change significantly, but at the same time, this is a rural area where there's not a lot of travel. So even adding another 30 cars per time, it could feel pretty significant for the people that live there
30 out of,
per day.
what's the total per day though, out of curiosity?
I think they said max was 28. Yep, exiting.
I know the
At the
background
peak times.
traffic, that's the new traffic.
Mm-hmm.
There's-
What is the current?
Yeah. I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately, mine's.
On the little graph, it just has the one that's proposed. I don't see the one for current,
Okay.
the actual.
Chris or Peter, if you have an ability to look up, or Craig, if you're on there too, if you've got access to the traffic study, if you could see what % increase we're talking about in traffic.
The percent increase is only like point.
Does anyone know
I
when
can tell you,
Go ahead, Chris.
yeah, for like East Henrietta Road, let's take Pinnacle or Ward Hill, for example. The average daily traffic is 808 vehicles per day, and that was in 2017. So if you add, 30 vehicles, let's see. Now that's not during the peak hour though, but if you take a look at, let's see, the AM peak, 9 enter and 28 exit, so that's 37, divide that and then add the 30 by 18 for the PM peak. Yeah, you're talking, 1 or 2 percentage points. And I think what we're finding also in some of these subdivisions, particularly the one Trailview South, that's very similar to this one, the traffic's probably even less than that. These are more the 55 and over crowd. Not that you can't have families, but what we're finding is during the peak hour, you just don't see the people that are coming in and out of these subdivisions.
So that came out to about a 4% increase is what I calculated.
Right.
Do you know when the Branch Brook, Long Branch area was developed?
If I were to guess, Steve, I mean, it's
About 18 years ago?
So since 95 is the point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look, that traffic, in other words, if you look at Ward Hill, I did not see any kind of spike indicative of when that whole development went in.
No, and really, the only time you see, just because I live off of Ward Hill,
Sure.
the only time you see a lot of traffic increase is when the Rush Nursery is letting out. Either kids are being dropped off or picked up. So that's when you see a lot of cars coming and going, is with the nursery school there.
Gotcha.
But I think, when you're looking, the other thing is when you're looking at the Branch Brook area, a lot of people go out the
Going
front.
north, that's true.
They go out to East Henrietta Road. They don't necessarily come out to the Ward Hill Road.
What about when the one with the 0 lot lines there to the west, the Wood Ridge or whatever it's called?
Wood Ridge? The age of those?
Yeah, is that since 95?
92, before
Okay,
95.
So that was before 95, okay. Great having a realtor on board, she knows all this stuff.
Try.
Okay. Any other questions on the traffic? So, one of the things that's still up in the air is whether he's going to need the second entrance. Again, the second entrance would be an emergency entrance only. It would be gated for emergency vehicles and only used if needed.
Where was that supposed to go?
It's, if you look in our
Second
board
page.
packet, here, if you come in around the loop you'll see a small gap just around the corner facing north.
Okay.
It comes right out of there, and heads back to back to Ward Hill.
Right. Yep, got that.
So right out of here.
Oh, okay.
So you'll see across from, you'll see these two pictures. Actually, it's even on, it's on the colored one. You can see the dotted green
Yeah,
line.
that's, okay,
That's it.
Oh,
I
interesting.
saw that.
Yeah, that's the easement for, so no matter what, he's gonna put an easement in there in case it's ever deemed necessary in the future, but
So it's not going to be a road per se, it's just going to be.
it's an
the
emergency access
possibility.
road, yeah. So what'll happen is that's up to the state as to whether they require it because of the number of homes there. So if you look at older development, that's a newer requirement by the state, to have a second entrance beyond a certain number of houses. He's applying for that, whereas he's doing this all in one phase. The necessity to build that road won't be triggered until he wants to get the building permit for the whatever number house it is, 21st house. I don't remember what the exact number is, but the point being, up to that point, he doesn't have to put in the road in order to get the building permit for that. Whatever house crosses the threshold, he either needs a waiver from the state by that point, or he needs to put in the road, or else he can't get the.
So would it actually be a paved road going through there? Or would it just be a stone road?
I don't know if stone roads are allowed. Chris, do you know the answer for the emergency access?
I would say our fire marshal would probably require them to be paved, just so we can maintain them. It's just easier to plow. But a stone, certainly a gravel road could stand up to the, you know, our fire equipment. It's just the maintenance of it makes it easier if they're paved.
Obviously, if it was a stone, if we did allow the stone road, it would be the, it would have to
It's emergency.
be built according to the New York State stone specifications for stone roads. So New York State allows stone or pavement. It's up to us as to, in fact, right now, one of the things we're looking to change for driveways right now in Henrietta, they have to be paved driveways. For historic properties and for rural residential properties, we're considering allowing the stone driveways as long as they meet the New York State code. But as Chris was saying, the issue is plowing. So stone roads are harder to plow. Any other questions? The little, if you'll notice on that same colored graph, there's a darker green gap going to the north. That's the future park road. The idea is that a road would go around to the cabin, and that's what our public hearing is with respect to, is the parkland and then the 4 easements. So basically open space easements. The purple one on your map is the, and if you want to throw this up, Becky, it's from the packet. It is from Peter's supplemental. It's the first color graph or first color image. Can you bring it online, Becky?
Sorry, I'm just trying to get to that page. Give me just a second here.
No problem. That way people listening in.
The first colored with the big yellow dashed outlines.
You got it. Big purple easement there.
Let me get it so you can see it on my page. Here we go. All right.
Perfect. Okay, so the large purple area, that's the agricultural easement. So it's a form of conservation easement. The distinction being that they can have agricultural structures on the land, but they cannot have any non-agricultural structures. And agricultural structures are defined by use. So for instance, they couldn't build a barn, say, oh, a barn is an agricultural structure, and then park cars in it. That's not an agricultural structure if you're parking cars. They're parking tractors, yes. Or obviously livestock or any other agricultural use. The teal or turquoise or whatever color you want to call that, That's the Parkland area, so that would become town park. It would be deeded to the town. There's a small entrance off of the road. There would be a road that comes around, and right where it says Parkland area is where we were looking to put a cabin and a parking lot. There's a, if you noticed on the drainage view, the current overland swale goes kind of through that area. I double checked with Peter to make sure if we regraded that area to bring it up a little bit, we could divert the swale around the parking lot and the park. There would be a culvert under the road, obviously. But he said that'd be absolutely no issue to do from a grading standpoint. So that's, again, we would have a cabin out there, and then that gains access. If you look just off to the southeast from the farthest, to the southwest from the far west corner of that lot, you can actually see the Genesee Valley Trail running through there. So we would cut some trails through the woods here to get to the Genesee Valley Trail and back. And then the other two are just conservation easements. The pink ones would be added to the properties inside the development. And then the green one, that's the one that portions of that we're talking about divvying up to the 4 properties along Ward Hill, as well as, in other words, they're basically to the right of that access driveway. Those would be added to the properties in the new development. To the left of it, that would be added to the properties on Ward Hill. And then obviously the small sliver to the west would be added to the properties in the development. So the idea is, again, we found that green belts are difficult to maintain, and if they add a lot of value, it's one thing. So like the green belt between Authors and Nevins it was really well set up. It's nice and big area for kids to play in. It's got a good connection to all of the cul-de-sacs. That is a well set up green belt. Like the ones like the pink one here that are in a bunch of neighborhoods, those are very difficult to maintain. And they really offer nothing except for a source of complaints, because why aren't you back there mowing them? And especially since, oh, by the way, they almost always are in a drainage area, whereas it's not difficult for a property owner with a push mower to get back there and mow them. When you go back there with a heavy, commercial riding mower, they get stuck or leave muddy tracks. So then after we get back there and mow them, everyone says, why'd you go back and mow them? Now they're all mud. It's just something that, again, if they offer value to the neighborhood, I'm all for them. When they're just like this, I'd rather see that become part of the property and they just have a conservation easement on it.
Gotcha.
So that, go ahead.
If those 4 landowners don't take that property, some of that property, is the town responsible for maintaining it all?
So again, what I've told the developer is that they would then be added to these lots.
Oh, okay, that's, okay.
But the thing is, because one of the things, if you remember when we did the GEIS, we changed the rules with regards to buffering, because one of the things it's one thing if you, as we talked about, like for instance, residents next to commercial. If the commercial predates the residential and I go to build a house there and choose to move there, I'm obviously okay with the commercial being there, or else I wouldn't have bought the house or built the house, right? It's the other way around. When the house is sitting there and the commercial property comes in, that's where we wanted the bigger buffer. Same thing here. These people, when they bought their place, this was farm. Now, again, it's not, while it's not it's not a safe assumption to believe that the property is never going to be developed. One of the things we want to do is make sure that the development doesn't end up right in their backyards. And so that's why we specified the buffer space to protect against that. The thing is, because we're essentially protecting those properties, I'm all for, if those property owners want to manage what that buffer looks like, that's up to them.
What if they choose to take it and do nothing with it, but let it get overgrown?
In terms of, in the rural residential, that's actually allowed, as long as they have to maintain a particular amount of yard. You know, now if a giant hogweed noxious plant like that comes in, they're gonna have to clear it out. But if it's just, you know, fields, wild fields, that's actually allowed in the rural residential beyond a particular,
But they're not required to maintain it and put lawn in and do all that stuff.
correct. They can, if they want, they can leave wildflowers, they can plant woods, you know, and there are programs, the county has where you can actually get free trees to put back there. They're small and they'll grow, but the other thing too is if you don't mind, trees like aspens or poplars, I could bring one of them over and the whole area will be wooded in probably 3 years, because that's what they grow, like weeds. Any other questions?
So when I look at the homes that may have been offered that 3.5 acres, it's these homes up here on the pink, next to the conservation easement.
So it's these ones right here, just north of the greens area. The pink was just offering, putting a buffer between the homes and the farm. And one of the things, we added that requirement. And if you remember, under New York State ag and market laws, all required buffers have to be on the non-agricultural side.
Gotcha.
So that's why that buffer ended up there. But rather than have the town take that over and have to try to mow it, and you can see how tough it would be to mow that strip, I'd rather the houses just take that over. And again, the conservation easement there just basically says you can't put structures there. So no sheds, stuff like that. You know, could they put a picnic table out there? Absolutely. Sandbox, something that's not permanent. Right.
Okay.
And again, or it could be trees, bushes, whatever they want. They could put a hedgerow, anything they want. Part of that thing, where that came from, is you have issues of, a lot of people don't like the fact, you know, if the farmer is spraying his crops, they want to have that buffer so that it's not affecting their backyard. So they may want, you know, a nice big hedgerow there, or they might like looking over a farm. I know we certainly do. So that's totally, by putting it in their yard, it's totally up to them what they do with that site.
And the access road that you would have going to the Parkland area is that green area that we see between those houses.
Correct.
I'm
And again,
curious
you can
how-
see it's dotted line. That would be the full path of the easement, because again, we'd get the easement now, since essentially they're setting up this property. That way, should, you know, again, New York State decide, let's say New York State gives a waiver now and somehow then later says, no, we changed our mind, you got to put it in.
It's already.
No matter what, we want the easement there.
I'm just curious with the traffic study, if they took into account if there actually is a cabin back there and somebody's having a function back there, how that's going to affect things.
That's a good question. Amy, are you still on?
I'm here.
So I think some of that, the answer will be that will be part of the seeker when we do the, if and when we look to build a cabin there. She was asking whether any of the cabin traffic was taken into account in the study.
No, it wasn't. But I mean, how much traffic would a cabin generate? You know, if someone's not living there full time, they're not generating morning and afternoon commuter traffic, and you know, it's generally it's off peak and it's very low.
It generally is off peak. The thing is, to Lisa's point, it's kind of burst, right? The event ends and now I've got 20 cars leaving.
And it's normally weekends, and I'm not sure, I don't know if Jason's on there or not, but I mean, cabins they're pretty much booked out every weekend,
Every
right?
weekend, yes.
Yeah,
So you're gonna have that continuation of the cabin traffic Saturdays and Sundays.
right.
I'm just curious if anybody thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, a traffic study typically looks at the morning and evening commuter peak times. You know, you're not looking at weekends because that's not when you're having critical traffic volumes on your roadways. Your traffic volumes on your roadways are typically highest during the morning and evening commuter peaks. So that's not something that a traffic study would typically look at.
So I think the biggest issue we'll have is if people are idiots leaving there and they're trying to race down a residential street.
That would be, this would be more, that would be more of a concern to me.
Right. Yeah, I don't think there'll be a great effect on Ward Hill. Certainly there won't be any effect on East River or Pinnacle. But the people driving past these homes, that's, you know, they will be. We deal with that today at our parks that are out in residential areas. Breeze Park, Martin Road Park, Lookup Park.
Do we have any data on traffic accidents or anything like that from Ward Hill Road? I guess I'm just concerned because that tends to be a road that people are known to go overly fast on, especially coming down the hill there.
Do you have any accident data? I remember that when that was brought up to the county, they did not see a hot spot there. They did not, but I don't know if you have anything on that, Amy?
We did not look at accidents as a part of this traffic study. But like you said, Monroe County DOT doesn't have any hot spots. We don't know of any current issues in this area. Speeding, of course, is a concern on any rural type roadway like this. But a development of this size isn't going to have a significant impact on the number of crashes that happen.
Well, could we look at it? Could we get that? Could you look into that for us? See if there was.
Why don't we do this? Chris, can you just get that data from the county? Chris Martin? I'll have somebody get us the data from the county. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Steve, this is Peter Vars. I can tell you, yeah, Chris can just reach out to Brent Penwarden. We did do that back in February, March as part of the planning board review, Brent Penwarden County DOT. And as Amy pointed out, they did not have any, the term that's been used tonight, designating it as an area of concern, and that includes both the Ward Hill Road Pinnacle Road intersection or the Ward Hill Road East Henrietta Road intersection. And then the other thing I would point out is the proposed development, the proposed intersection, and the traffic count numbers have been reviewed by the Monroe County Department of Transportation. Ward Hill Road is a county road. They have reviewed it. Correspondence was provided to the planning board, and I believe, Chris, you were copied on it, that the county basically has approved the intersection, has approved the geometry of the design, and is ready to issue the permit to allow the driveway. Point being is, as Amy has pointed out in her presentation, they're not seeing any potential significant or negative impacts with the traffic from this development, thus why they're not requiring any improvements and are ready to permit the intersection. But a lot of those questions have been asked, and that information can get resubmitted to the town board if necessary.
Yeah, Peter, and this is Chris Martin. I have spoken with Brent in the past, and yeah, they didn't see a significant number of accidents. I mean, there was one a couple years ago where there was a serious injury. But other than that, they really haven't seen anything. But I'll get something from the county if you wish.
That'd be great. We'd appreciate that, Chris. Like I said, I remember from when it went to the planning board that basically there was no hot spots, there was no concern. It was, and what they mean by that is accidents occur on roads at a fairly predictable rate based off of the amount of traffic on them. If you see hot spots, and for instance, Martin Road and West Henrietta Road is one, certainly recently. When the Monroe County Sheriff looked at the accident data, it is higher than the normal rate. So that's what they consider a hot spot. And so, as they look at this stuff, that's what they're looking for. Are accidents occurring here at a higher rate than normal? Unfortunately, drivers make mistakes, and especially in this day and age where drivers seem to be more distracted, it's not uncommon to have accidents. But the question is it happening at a higher rate, and therefore most likely the intersection or the road is at fault? And if so, then that's where they look to try to correct it. Whether that means through signage, traffic control devices, on the rare, very expensive route, they will try to change the grading. And sometimes that's what causes it, whether it's a blind curve, whether it's a steep hill, that type of stuff. Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you, Amy and Peter, for presenting. We appreciate that. So remember, board, will get to me any comments you want me to include in our speaker notice back to the planning board. I will draft something up. If you can have me stuff by tomorrow evening, I'll draft something up so that we'll have it and we can review it together at Wednesday's meeting. I think that's it. Any other last comments on this before I close it out?
Are we going to discuss how we're going to handle the public hearing?
That's topic one next. I'm talking about closing out the presentation.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, again, thank you, Peter and Amy. And you're welcome to stay and listen, but there's no real need for you to do so.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon or evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Night.
So topic one, calling for a public hearing. I'm sorry, I'm just checking something in terms of resolution number. Okay. The issue on the public hearing is, so as I mentioned, the governor extended the public hearing. He, of course, extended it to July 7th. Our next town board meeting is July 8th. There was also a question from the board members as to whether we wanted to have a virtual public hearing for one of this nature. We've talked about a couple potentials as to how to do it. There's still going to be some restrictions on size of crowds, although some of the stuff, I find it funny to just do it as a pure number, because I look at, as I put it, you put 10 people in the supervisor conference room and it's crowded. You put 10 people in the dome and you'll have trouble finding them, right? So size of venue absolutely plays a part in that. So, do we find a large venue to hold an in-person public hearing on the 8th? We should be in phase 4 by then. So in theory, it should be possible except for the size of crowd. Although again, if they go back to old stuff where they say, I can reach a maximum of 25% capacity. Becky, could you lock the screen back on us? Thank you. If you basically go up to, so let's say they decide you can exceed the 10 people as long as you're no more than 20% capacity, we could certainly find a venue large enough to house them. Worst case scenario, if we're absolutely 100% restricted to 10 people at a time, we could be not in the room. We could have a screen up here. We could bring 10 people through at a time. they speak, they leave, the next 10 people come in. That's the other way to potentially handle it. The other thing we had talked about is doing one outside at the band shell. Now, the issue you have is you don't want to share microphones. So what we would have to do is have a phone, a cell phone that they could call, and the cell phone would be next to a microphone. So essentially we'd have to have the exchange that way in terms of getting input from the mic. Because obviously if I'm sharing microphones, that's one way to potentially have issues from a transmission standpoint. So
Is there any way to do it? I mean, can we use our rec center? I don't know. I mean, that's,
you have the same potential problem there. Again, that the issue that you have anytime I'm in the public is a shared microphone. But again, I think we can get around that by using we would require people to have a cell phone.
either that or one of the school gymnasiums or one of the school
Auditoriums, yeah.
Right in the cafeteria at the high school. That's where they did the board meeting, the school board meeting.
We could also just use auditorium. I mean, they got seating in there.
Right.
Spacious enough instead of.
I'm just
Cafeteria.
thinking everybody's got to scooch in to let the people get by them if they're not there first.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the point is we can find a venue where you could potentially do it in person. The big issue, again, with the venue has to do with the shared microphone, which we'll have to check with Don in terms of legality of essentially requiring a phone. I guess what we could say is if you absolutely do not have a phone, then they could come up to the microphone or something. We could figure something out.
We could use disposable covers or something like that as well over the,
What's that?
a disposable cover over the microphone, similar to, what we use for headphones and things like that in order to keep them clean when we share.
As it stands now, there's a question as to whether the extension of the ability to hold virtual public hearings actually prohibits in-person public hearings. And that's something we're exploring right now. So certainly through July 7th, it's going to be legal to continue to hold virtual public hearings. I don't know if this is, if there's if the hesitation on holding a virtual public hearing is just because of the date between the 7th and the 8th, or if it's more because we actually are looking to hold an in-person hearing on this particular issue.
Based off of the last meeting, the members of the board, there were multiple members of the board who felt that for a meeting of this magnitude, the virtual public hearing would not work well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just date related. Now, my understanding is that it's the pause New York that I think was extended through June 27th is the one that prohibits the in-person public hearings.
Yeah, it's a lot more nuanced, and I think I don't think it's worth it to get in too much into the law at this point in here, except to know that we can definitely have virtual public hearings through July 7th. New York pause is still in place and probably will still be in place after July 7th. And I'm going to continue to assess the guidance that comes out from the state in terms of whether and how we might hold an in-person public hearing at any point during this New York pause situation.
I can tell you what the argument will be. Well, they've been having all these protests and rallies with greater than 10 people in it. Why
Right.
can't we have a public hearing with greater than 10 people at it? Go to Wegmans, there's more than 10 people.
Well, graduations are now going to be allowed after, June 26th, for groups of 150 people? Mhm.
Right. So that's why I'm thinking that, again, after that date, I don't think it's unreasonable. Now, again, it would need to be socially distanced. We'd have to make sure to protect, but
Everybody. would
I
have to
gotta
wear
believe we
masks.
can do an in-person public hearing.
It certainly gets easier if you are talking outdoors, because a lot of that stuff you're talking about is outside.
So my suggestion is, if we're gonna do an outside one, that we not schedule it during the board meeting itself, because then we've got logistics issues of also holding the board meeting at that site. So my thought is that we do it before the 7th. And that way, anybody who wants to join virtually can join virtually because it's allowed. But if the reading of it is correct and that the executive order that just extended the use of virtual town meetings public hearings doesn't require that they be virtual, but only that they are allowed to be virtual, then if we schedule it on or before the 7th, we have the option of going either way. We don't have to name the venue yet because again, our next meeting this would be sometime in July. So my thought is, do we essentially on Tuesday, July 7th, hold the public hearing and we have to choose the venue? Is there a conflict from planning board or any other boards meetings on the 7th? That's out to either.
I'm pulling out the calendar.
Thank you.
Another option,
We do have planning board on the 7th. I think
That's correct. Planning board is on the 7th.
I think the concern is because there's a lot of resident interest in this particular public hearing, making sure that we let the residents know with enough time, as originally they're going to get mailers, what exactly should we be telling them in the mailers, just making sure that.
Oh, I agree. My point is at this meeting, we don't have to name the venue. In other words, after this meeting, if we decide to go that route, I'd work with you, Becky, to figure out where this venue would be. We do that in the next week so that we can get the notice out essentially 3 weeks in advance, 2 to 3 weeks in advance. The thing is, if you get the notice out too soon, then people forget by the time it comes around.
is there a public hearing that needs to be had by the planning board on this as well? And what is the planning board?
They closed their public hearing. Is that correct?
That's
Bruce?
correct.
I thought.
That's correct. We have a planning board meeting scheduled a week from this Tuesday to do preliminary.
So you don't
And
have
of course,
any
secret.
hearings left on that one at the planning board?
No, we do not. They close it at their March meeting.
That was the meeting that went for hours.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another option is to do it both ways at the same time. So you would have an in-person meeting and a virtual option at the same time. I don't know how hard, if that would be any more difficult than what you're doing now or not, Steve, but.
Well, that was my suggestion. Is the point is we could have it either, because there might be some people, especially if you have a senior individual or other person who's in a high-risk group, may not be comfortable coming to an in-person public meeting and would prefer to do to do so virtually. I don't want to, whereas I want to be able to accommodate the people who want to show up, and I also don't want to force people to show up who are uncomfortable doing so. So that's why I was suggesting we do it on or before the 7th. I would think then maybe, maybe do we do it on the 6th and forego our workshop?
You could just do it after workshop.
Or after the workshop.
After the workshop.
Are they gonna allow us to have a public meeting even outdoors on the 6th?
Again.
If he's not making, I thought, didn't this go until he wasn't gonna make a decision till July 7th?
No, so again, there's a lot of executive orders in effect. There is the Pause New York, which is the one that restricts public gatherings, stuff like that. That one has been extended at least through June 27th. There's already been some relaxation. Now, again, if there's a backtrack, we would have to cancel the public meeting because, the governor said the same thing about those graduation ceremonies, that if we have a significant backslide, the okay may be rescinded. But as of right now, after the 26th, you said? After June 26th, that those, you have to be in a particular phase I believe you have to be in a particular phase in terms of startup, but that they will allow, in that case, gatherings up to 150 people, which should more than cover us for right? So the idea is that we would call for an open meeting. But again, I want to do it before the 7th so that if we, so let's say something backslides, we then have a choice to make. We either cancel it or postpone it, or we continue with the virtual only, but we have that option.
So we're talking doing something after July 4th. Probably, I would rather push it out more. That would be my suggestion.
Why?
Because it seems.
Are you just trying to?
No,
Well, I
no,
don't
I'm
know
not
what you're
trying to
to
put
do.
off anything, but it seems that the further we get out, the more things might be open for having a meeting in public with everybody there. So that's my thinking.
Right, but then let me throw it the other way. So again, if right now they've announced that we can have meetings up to 150, why wouldn't we be able to hold this?
We're really talking right after the 4th. I don't know how many people are going to be in town then. If we push that another week, it might be better. But that's my suggestion.
Right, but
It
then
doesn't
it's-
have to fly. That's my suggestion.
Right, then it's after our town board meeting.
I just really think it's important enough to make sure we have people that can attend the meeting. That's my whole point.
And part of what we're bumping up into, though, is that we don't know what the mandate is going to be after July 8th. Is that one of the issues? Or July
No,
7th?
after July 7th, we don't know that they're gonna, in other words, they may not extend the virtual because you can now have in person, but there may still be people who are uncomfortable.
Yeah, but couldn't we have virtual anytime we want? I mean,
I don't know that you can.
I thought meetings would.
Yeah, other places I thought had already been doing virtual for the past couple of years.
No, it depends. So for instance, I guess it depends on, we certainly can't be virtual.
Right.
See.
It's the board members that can't be virtual. It has to be an in-person. The law was usually that it was typically that the board members, the officials had to be there at the meeting. And the meeting had to be open to the public. And that's obviously not the case these days under these executive orders.
But the public could still be present virtually and ask their questions virtually.
Right. But it couldn't be prohibited from coming in person, which is the difference.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you see a lot of towns will broadcast things
Right.
live, but they still have the option to come in person.
Well, how many of them take online calls though?
I don't know how many, some do.
I mean, if we can find a way to make sure people can attend the meeting,
So you think a lot of people are gonna take that Monday off?
I don't know. I don't really know if they are or not, but
The holiday is on a Saturday. So I was just looking, trying to figure out when the holiday was. It's on a Saturday. So
Right.
what holiday, what would that give, what would somebody get off? if it was
Friday.
Somebody,
Friday.
The
yeah,
day before?
the day
Yeah.
before. Well, or the day after, it depends on
When you're self-employed.
the position.
I know.
Yeah, normally-
There's no such thing as days off when you're self-employed.
Right.
Normally it falls on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to
The
be Friday. Yeah.
Sunday, it's the Monday.
I can verify because
Yeah.
At least in the contract.
In the contracts, that's the way it goes.
Well, that's why I was trying to figure out what day it was on, and it's actually on
Saturday.
Saturday. So,
I do,
I know if it fell midweek, then people usually try to take the whole week off.
Right.
But if it falls on a Saturday, it's just gonna be,
Yeah, so town hall is closed on the 3rd, for instance.
I feel
Yeah,
like,
but you have the virtual option anyway. So even if you are on vacation, if you really want to jump on
you
at
can.
6 o'clock,
Right, because if we provide that, you can either come and person or virtually.
You mentioned having it outside. I like that idea, but of course, you know what's gonna happen on the.
What we would have, if we did an outside thing, we would have a rain event, most likely in the rec center.
And the other thing with people being out of town is that unless you're, I mean, I don't know where many people are going to stay in a hotel or do anything like that at this point. So I think your traffic to go out of town is going to be reduced as well.
Right. Does the 6th sound like a good after the workshop?
I think it could work.
As long as people have the option to be here in person.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And so we want to say that, make the decision now that if the prohibition against groups of larger than, again, a number small enough, I don't want to say just 10 because what if it changes, but in other words, if the number, if we're not able to hold an in-person public hearing, I'll just put it that way, that we would then postpone it, we wouldn't hold it virtually.
That makes sense.
Okay,
Mhm.
then we'll put that right in the notice that, in other words, so let's say there is a large spike and the governor knocks us back to phase 2, phase 1. Because in theory, we'll be in phase 3 or potentially even phase 4 by then.
Mhm.
And so the point being, if there is a backslide and Pause New York says no public hearings, in-person public hearings, then at that point we would reschedule. We would not hold it virtually.
Okay.
We're not going to hold it virtually only.
Right.
Right.
We'd delay the whole thing.
That if we can't have in-person, we're not going to have it.
That's what I was saying.
Okay. So we'll call for the meeting on the 6th. Location will be announced.
6 p.m. is what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
I think that works well. 6 p.m. It would even be better if it was June 6th, because then it would be 6 p.m. But,
Right.
There's a lot of people who, no, I better stay away from that comment.
Yeah, we probably don't want to. I gotcha.
Get yourself into trouble.
It just took me a minute.
Okay. So again, we're going to, in the resolution, we're going to call for it. I'll help write that up to modify that as far as what we're going to put in there. But basically, it's going to say that we're going to call for it on July 6th at 6 p.m. at a location to be announced. And that if the conditions exist that we are unable to hold the public or the in-person portion of the meeting, that we would postpone the meeting. Okay. Any other questions, comments on item 1? The local law to implement updated and clarified regulations for the chicken coops. So again, we got all the comments that you guys made. We did some further simplification of the process. As we went through it, we looked at it because we're requiring a certificate of compliance. All residential certificates of compliance, are $55. Since the target we had for the total one-time fee was $75, that kind of drove the price for the fee for the chicken coop inspection is $10, and the backyard chicken license is $10. So the total is still $75, which was the guidance we had from the board. And again, so one of the other things we decided to do from ease for the residents and ease for the clerks and or building department is that we are not going to make it renew. It is a perpetual license. However, it is non-transferable. So it's for that person at that property. If they move to a new property, they have to get a new license, a new permit. If that person moves away and somebody else takes over the property with the chicken, they will have to get licensed. And the reason we wanted that is to make sure that whoever is taking care of those chickens is aware of the regulations and is signed on that they understand that they have to take, because especially it's the manure. We have to make sure that they are properly disposing of the manure so that we're not creating an unhealthy situation.
Is, the one thing I didn't, so there is no annual fee?
There's no annual fee.
It's a one-time, so if you get your permit, if you build it and pay the fee, $75, you're good for the next 25 years.
However long that
However
chicken coop
long it
lasts.
lasts.
If, obviously, if the chicken coop, if it's ever deemed that it's no longer suitable, then you're gonna have to get a new coop built and a new certificate of compliance. But you won't need a new license, so it would only be $65. What?
Got to license your dog every year.
That's a New York state law,
Right.
and it's not every year. You can do it every 3 years. I know. I'm not a fan of dog licenses,
Annual fee,
but,
right, I thought we were still gonna have an annual fee.
well, we were talking about doing it on a 3-year spread, but the problem gets into, now you've got a whole bunch of issues in terms of the resident has to remember, we have to do with a mailer. It's just a whole lot of headache.
For chickens.
Right, for not a whole lot of gain.
Right.
And then we also don't have to deal with the unpleasant phone calls of, you didn't renew your dog license, oh, that dog passed away. That's not a fun call to make. One of the things I did suggest we start doing is we're gonna get postcards and send our condolences when that happens. So, okay. Oh, and again, no, it was up to 6 chickens for a residential backyard. And in a rural residential up to 1 acre, from 1 to 2 acres, it's up to 12, and from greater than 2 acres, it's up to 18. Obviously, a farm, that limit is set by New York State agricultural laws, not us.
A lot of people found the chicken conversation very interesting.
Mhm. I know Linda really liked it.
Yes.
So I just, the size of the chicken coop, with the fence and everything for the residential, I mean, if it's 108 square feet and then another 90 for the 6 of them, it's a 200 square foot. Somebody mentioned the size, it's pretty good size in your backyard.
So again, it's not really applicable for some of these tiny backyards. You're not, I mean, you could do it, but you're not going to have much of a backyard. I'd be curious, we'll have to get our chicken coops into geolocated so we can have it in the GIS data to see where are the spread of chicken coops.
Must be said that people who have chickens will give up their whole backyard. They don't care, they love their chickens.
People do love their chickens. Apparently there was one wandering around McDonald's earlier today.
So funny. I just sold a house where they had to take the chickens from chicken coop. It was part of the deal. I chuckled about that.
Any other comments on chickens? Okay. The other one we have is the local law to amend the town code. So that's to clarify and update the provisions. So again, that one, if you read the code today, arguably, as soon as we give Article 10 approval, it goes straight to permit, and thus doesn't need to go to zoning board. We're making it explicit because you can argue it. It doesn't make sense to have it be a 2-step process. So if it's a non-historic property, you go to the zoning board for appeals. If it's a historic property, you come to us and we can grant. Now, if we say you have to have a 20-foot setback and they want to go to 15, then they could go to zoning board and appeal our decision of 20. But we can set new setback requirements based off of the historic property. Because as we've noted, historic properties are not set back as far as current houses. So it's rare that I can actually do any work on a historic house where I'm not inside of the setbacks for the residential zone. Any questions, comments on that?
Nope.
Okay, so this next one, I actually want to pass at this meeting because it's a very time-sensitive one. Let me see if we got, I had mentioned that to Jenny and she was talking about getting me a number.
It'd be 13-158.
Found it. Yep,
Yeah.
town board workshop number 4, perfect. So I'll make the motion. And Mike, if you don't have it, you're up for a second.
Steve, it's
So-
Don.
What's that?
It's Don. Did you get my updated version?
I don't know.
I don't know if I have the updated version.
That's in the email.
Whatever
Jackie,
came
do you
through
know
in
if this is the updated
agenda.
version or?
I emailed it to you and Kevin, but it was late. It was just before 4 o'clock. I didn't know.
I have not, no.
Yeah. I can send it to you.
Oh, no.
Basically I tweaked it and added a revocation provision so that if people weren't in compliance, that just like the chicken license, it could be revoked. And that way there, you didn't have a situation where people just got the permit and did whatever they wanted.
Don Young, 411. Okay, hold on.
Oh, was it 411? Yeah, it was tight.
That's when it arrived.
All right, so where
I added some titles, just some general formatting stuff as well.
We gonna get that?
Don, could you forward that to the whole town board?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna.
I send it to townboard@henrietta.org. It'll go to everybody, right?
Correct.
Um,
So
but
the,
yeah, I tried to get it out right before the meeting just in case you want to do it. But do you mind if, Steve, if I just run over it the way, some of the things that I did and what I thought?
I just want to bring to people's attention to note there's an attachment, which is the actual policy, which I think we'd sent out Friday, maybe. That's the procedure by which we're going to follow and operate.
Mhm.
This is just making it clear, because again, this is another one of those that it's debatable as to whether we have the authority to do it already. Don wanted to make sure that we were explicit that it was in there.
So just so you all know, it's very much the same as what Steve had sent out earlier. All I did was I organized it a little bit. I added some titles to the different sections. The main thing I did was I added a revocation section in case the code enforcement officer or building inspector finds that somebody is, they added twice the amount of tables after he got the permit, or they're blocking parking or something like that. He can issue a notice to correct. If it doesn't get corrected within 7 days, he can revoke the permit, and that could be appealed to the town board, just like the chicken license. The other thing I did, and this is more for legal reasons than practical reasons, was I made that it clear that it was the building inspector's duty to handle these with the advice of the committee, but that the building inspector would be making the decisions.
Yeah, that I'd had in the email, I guess, I never, when we were talking clarification, that is an important point. In other words, because under the authority by which we're doing this, it is the building inspector, and especially in this case, what we're doing from a procedural standpoint is asking that it be the director of building and fire prevention, although it's technically his designee, but whenever possible, he is going to be handling them personally.
Okay.
But that, again, under the authority of the New York State Building Code and not building code, but essentially the stuff for the code enforcement officers, it's his authority to do that.
Right. So otherwise, 95% of the text is the same. I just wanted to make it legal and give us a revocation provision. And that's add some titles and formatting so that if anyone wanted to look at it more closely, it would be accessible. That's all.
When I was reading this over the other day, the two questions I had was, one, there was no time that they could stay open till, or at least maybe I didn't see it.
Yes. Oh, you mean
You know,
at night?
your outdoor seating, how long it could be open at night.
So what we should do is have them state that in the,
You're right, it doesn't show.
Yeah, you could put it, do you want to have a rule or do you want to have, do you want to have a standard time or?
no, I think I just want to make sure that he has on the permit, it states what the maximum hours of operation are.
So you could slide that in under application requirements.
I would think that you would want some, you know, if it's in a commercial area.
The problem you get into, Mike, is that we could spend all days crafting the hard rules that, you know, again, it's the same thing when we review a special permit. We don't have hard rules. We set what the boundaries are and we take into account the situation. But it is a general rule, yes. So, you know, so like one of the things that also is very clear is that anytime they come in, they're going to review the special permit for the restaurant itself to make sure it wasn't prohibited from having seating, right? Or outdoor liquor license or whatever.
Do you at least want to say that the hours shall be no greater than those for the restaurant proper?
Sure.
I'm going to add that in there, that the application shall require the hours of operation.
Okay. One of the things we also ought to do in the bullet under in reviewing the plans, the review committee shall ensure the following. I don't know that I thought I had put it in here, but I don't see it. That it shall not create, you know, a detrimental effect or whatever Don language you want to use there that basically says it's not going to disturb the neighborhood.
Do we want to say, see, that's kind of the discretionary stuff that starts to become touchy.
But the point is, we review that on our special permit, right? We make sure that it's.
Yeah, but you're a discretionary board. You're not a building inspector. That's the difference. Do we want to say anything about maybe no outdoor music or volume level of that? You know, how do you regulate that with a standard? I mean, we do have a noise code, don't we? I think we do.
We do. And the typical language there is does not disturb the repose of the neighborhood.
So maybe that's, you know, given again, the circumstances here, maybe that.
I'll just say that it doesn't violate the noise code and just provide that code.
Yep. I'm gonna put that in there.
Okay, does that work for you, Mike?
I mean, I just concerned that there was nothing in there that all of a sudden a place could be open until 2 in the morning if they wanted to, or all night.
Well, we're not, isn't there like a limit anyways? We open?
Well, that's what Don was saying is first off, it can't exceed the current operational hours of the restaurant.
Yeah.
And then the second, right. And that, but then, you know, that they basically can't disturb the repose of the neighborhood. So, Anything else?
The other thing I was asking about, I was a little confused on what happens if they want to, when restaurants can reopen back up and reoperate. It almost sounded like they could continue their outdoor.
But it said they have to get.
No.
They have to apply for a permanent. All
Yeah.
we're saying is if they're moving the process forward, because we don't have a whole lot of meetings in the summer, my point is if the thing changes after July 8th, well, it doesn't even have to be after July 8th, right? The agenda for the special permits is set well before they'd have to get the thing filed. So then they would have to file to August. And if the thing lifts in mid-July, now they have to temporarily shut down the seating and then reopen them. What this said is, it's basically, if they haven't applied, so let's say that the restaurants open up on July 14th. They would then at that point have to shut down their temporary outdoor seating unless they have applied to get a permanent. So they'd have to have made an application, the special use permit application. And then basically what would happen is we would allow it to continue until that hearing. If they get denied, the temporary goes away and they never get the permanent. If the permanent comes in, they make it permanent. And the reason we were talking about that is even though restaurants are opened up, I guarantee you there'll be a bunch of people who will feel much more comfortable eating outdoors than eating indoors. Yeah, so that's what that clause, it may not be 100% clear, but that was the point of that clause is, we didn't want them to just continue it indefinitely.
Right.
So we basically said, look, if you want to go to a permanent outdoor scenario, you can. Now, again, in that special use permit, they can apply under the normal thing. In other words, permanent not permanent doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. But the point is, it's under the normal statutes. And so at that point, they could say, hey, we want to, we're only really looking to have this through spring of next year because we figure there might be issues in the upcoming cold and flu season, but we're not going to build a permanent structure. We're going to use a, open air tent. Again, that can be part of their permanent application. But the point is, we just only want this for the short term. If there had been more advanced notice that this was going to be allowed, people could have gotten an application in. By the time this was announced, they basically said starting tomorrow, right? And oh, by the way, it was well after the special permits meeting had already been canceled because there were no applicants. So there was no way for us to do anything under the normal process. So we looked and said, okay, what other processes do we have that would allow restaurants to do this in the short term? And the answer was the special events. Special events is not meant for something that's going to be continuous for a long period of time. It's literally meant for a special event. So the idea is, okay, let's let this cover during the short term. And then if they're going to be doing it long term, they need to go through the normal process. But we just we wanted that clause in there so that, again, there's no interruption in service.
I think the policy is very clear in that respect, that this only carries through the pause order as it impacts restaurants. And once that is up, that if they want to continue their outdoor seating and they don't have an outdoor special use permit, then they need to go and get one.
Right.
Yeah, my point was they can continue their business until
as long as they've
Right.
applied.
Right.
Right.
They-
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
They should if it's decent, if it's going to continue.
Right.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it says right here, only in effect during the forward New York reopening plan and terminates on the day the region officially completes the reopening.
And then it basically says they can apply, and it says specifically, during the time the approval process is in motion, a restaurant may continue to use their previously approved temporary outdoor seating, even if beyond the normal termination date, as long as their approval has not been revoked and as long as they continue to pursue the normal approval process. And then if the special use permit is approved, the temporary outdoor seating becomes permanent. If it's denied, then the temporary outdoor seating permit expires.
think this is good.
Yep.
They may find another way to expand their business.
Right,
Yeah, I think it's great.
especially because restaurants could use this shot in the arm.
Right.
Yes.
And so can the residents. There's a lot of residents who want to get out and go to the restaurants.
Very true.
Mike's one of them.
Go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on that? Kevin, did you have any questions for us?
No, I think I'm good, Steve. I just want to let you know I got one letter of intent for one of the local restaurants, and I already see 2 things wrong with it. So it's a work in progress. We'll get through it.
Wrong with the process or wrong with their letter?
With their letter, they wanted a tent with walls on it, which kind of defeats the purpose of outdoor seating.
Right,
Yeah.
I agree.
And
Okay,
they block the traffic pattern around the building for fire access. So we'll work with it.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, professional service, design services.
Hey,
We didn't
Steve,
pass
did you want to
that
move
first.
that
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, we're voting on this one here. I'm not used to that.
as amended?
Thank you. Well, was the resolution amended, or you're saying that with the amended
Policy.
policy?
Updated policy, yeah.
Okay. So I will, fellow board members, I have resolution 13-158, 2020, to allow for issuing temporary outdoor seating permits through the special events permitted process.
Second.
So again, this resolution applies to the policy as amended by town attorney. We could have just added that by approval of the town attorney, and then we wouldn't have needed to worry about it, right? Any other further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
I sent the updated version to Becky and you, Steve, just now,
Make sure if you could send it to Kevin.
and Kevin.
He was on the first one, right? You said?
Yeah, and I just sent the one we just amended to the 3 of you. Actually, I had him in there too.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay, now we'll call in Chris Martin. This is for the Henrietta Town Court architectural plans.
Right, Chris Martin, Director of Engineering and Planning in the Sunny West Wing. As you know, we got four proposals. I thought 4 good proposals, one from Bergman, the other one from SWBR, Hamlin Architects, and of course, Passero Associates. And, any of those 4 architects are more than capable of certainly working on our town court. However, there was a pretty discrepancy in prices. The lowest was Bergman at $128,000. SWBR was second at $167,000. Hanlon, $187,500, and then Passero was around $231,000 and change. But they included a couple extra items that weren't part of the proposal. We checked around with the various, like Bergman, for example, we checked their references and they checked out very well, as did SWBR, Hanlon, and Passero, of course, has done several projects with us already. So I guess right now, we don't have to go with the lowest price, but as you can see, there is a significant difference between first and second place. So I guess at this point, does the town board have any questions? Are you leaning one way or the other? We would like to try to award at Wednesday's town board meeting so we can get the process started.
Yep. So just to be clear, my plan is not to build this year because of the uncertainty of revenues due to COVID, but I would like to have the architectural design done so that if any stimulus money comes out looking for projects, and money falls from the sky, I want to have something ready to say, yes, let's build this. So the, that's, like I said, why I want to move forward with the architectural plans, and I'll hold off my opinions so that I'm not biasing the other board members.
You never do, Mr. Supervisor.
Rob?
My question is, have they done any work like this before? Any other courts?
Yeah, you mean Bergman Associates, Rob?
Uh-huh.
Are you talking about Bergman's proposal?
Yes, I am.
Yes, he is, Bergman.
Yeah, so, they have done a lot of municipal work. They've done, just completed the Aronicoit Department of Public Works building. They're also working on the Rex Library Center over at the town of Chili. They have done some remodeling of courts. In their proposal, they do mention a couple of courts they did. I don't know if they've done a building from scratch for a town court, but certainly they've done renovations for other town courts and village courts.
All right, thanks, Mr. Martin. The other question I have is pricing. If we're approving this now, materials and everything can go up. Any thought about that?
Well, so again, that pricing for the architecture, there isn't really much in the way of.
So this price won't change.
Firm fixed
Being
price.
above weight.
Right. Now, with that said, one of the things that often happens on professional contracts and stuff like that, we'll change our mind and they'll say, well, that wasn't in the original specs.
Right.
So here's what the addition is going to be. Any addition would have to come back to the town board for approval.
Okay, those are my only questions.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Martin.
Discounts don't have to come back.
Thank
to
you.
the town board. We can accept discounts,
Yeah.
but
Not to exceed, right?
right, it's a not to exceed number. Linda says we can always go below, but she'd probably say that we don't do it very often.
Doesn't happen very often, that's right.
Chris, did you say that all three architects or all four of them are pretty much equally the same comparable?
I mean,
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, all of them can certainly do the job, Mike. I've worked with all these professionals in one fashion or the other in the last 30 years. Either one of these could do a great job. Certainly we know that Passero has done a good job in our rec center and our library. Hanlon Architects are doing the sheriff's station right next door to us on Red Creek and Calkins Road. And certainly SWBR has got a great reputation as well. What it really comes down to, I think, is the cost.
Right.
And the other question I had is, I think it was on the SWBR. I can't open the attachment now. That I saw they did one in Troy, a courthouse in Troy, or they remodeled one.
Yeah, that's correct.
And
The city of Troy.
On there, it said when the state required them to build another courtroom, and they'd already had two, they had a third courtroom. Troy's about the same size as Henrietta, a little bit bigger. Is there a certain number of courtrooms that the state requires a town or village or city to have?
Well, I can't answer that one, Mike. I don't think there is a requirement, but I couldn't speak to that.
So some of it goes in front of the Office of Court Administration, but one of the things is because of the close proximity to Albany, there may be additional requirements in terms of, handling cases. So essentially, one of the things that we've had a brief discussion on is there have been talks sometime in the past of the county going to a kind of a unified, I forgot what the term's called, where they arraignment, rather than handling them all in the individual towns. And we would certainly propose that ours become one. If that's the case, there might be a need for an additional courtroom for that. So, but again, today we have a single courtroom, we're already talking to go into two. It would certainly be interesting to see if they could come up with a design in such a way that we would be able to add the third sometime in the future. although one of the things we're trying to do from the layout standpoint is to essentially sit on top of the current footprint of the library, because we know that earth is well compacted and will make a very good base for a building.
That's all I have.
There is a big discrepancy. I mean, it's over $100,000 from one to the other. I mean, that's what I was trying to figure out when I was looking at it, is there more coming from one over the other, or why is there such a huge discrepancy?
You know, sometimes it depends. I've done a lot of work with the folks from the town court in essentially getting their needs and getting them down and doing a preliminary drawing. And we have a lot of the initial design, if you will, done. Some people might have given more of a discount for that than others. Sometimes it's people are hungry to build their municipal business, and so they do it at a significant discount to ensure they get the business. There's a whole lot of reasons as to why you see those discrepancies.
Just seemed to be substantial.
It was, yeah, you know, it's interesting. Well, again, we dug into it, and we couldn't find any deficiencies in the less costly options.
I tried to break it down and I couldn't figure it out.
Right.
And I will add, Steve, that I did talk to the Bergman Associates, the project manager, that would be, if we hire them, the project manager. And I asked him, did he feel his price was fair and reasonable, and can he do the work for that cost? And he said yes.
Yes.
And some of those issues that you mentioned, Steve, exactly. You said you guys had a pretty good footprint of the building. You know, certainly there's, you know, room for us to move things around a little bit. But, you know, if we were going to add a second floor or, you know, increase the size significantly, then, yeah, there would probably be an increase in cost. But I think they're just lean and mean. You know, they took a look at what we provided them and said, well, that's going to save us some money in the long run.
Right.
Oh, and they did the City of Rochester Public Safety Plan.
So one of the things I will want when we do the resolution, if we decide to go with Bergman, and talking with the other towns, the project manager who was named on the proposal is who we had talked to, and they said he was great. In fact, in the one project, they had a different project manager. They were having all kinds of problems. That project manager was booted off the project. The one that was the named one on ours came in, and they said it was so smooth sailing when the new guy came in. So one of the things when we accept, I intend to stipulate that the named project manager has to be assigned to us.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
I don't know if you brought that up on your call, Chris, or not, but.
I did. I spoke to my contact, and he said pretty much the same thing that you said, Steve. So the gentleman that's in the proposal, that's, if we go with Bergman, that's who we would want to go with.
Right. So what do you guys think?
I think with what's going on, it's, you know, fiscally better to go with the lower, as long as we're getting what we're supposed to be getting.
Yep. So one of the things that, in looking at this resolution, Chris, we're gonna need to probably have be it further resolved. We should check with Linda to make sure if we have to set up a capital project fund for this project. I don't know if we need it for the architectural or if we're talking sometime down the future when you go to build it, but let's just make sure we get with Linda that we have any necessary financial authorizations in this same resolution.
Yeah,
Okay,
Steve,
I
this is
can check
Linda.
with Linda.
I would set up a separate project and then how we're going to fund this, because I
Okay.
don't believe there's room in Chris's engineering professional services line.
So it was originally to be from the surplus, the whole project and the construction as well was supposed to be from the surplus. which again is why we're not looking to move forward on the construction, because that surplus is going to be used to cover the loss. So yeah, we'll have to approve the creation of that, that special project fund. So Linda, if you could send to Chris what you want added to the resolution.
Can we do it as a separate resolution? Are you
Okay.
guys okay with that?
If you want to do it as a separate resolution, I'm fine with that, as long as Becky is okay with that.
I'll buy her ice cream.
Okay. I think she just approved it.
Better be an ice cream cake.
Okay. Any other questions on this?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
My pen. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Chris, you're up for 6 and 7. The
Right, yeah, we can do those together if that's okay.
Yep. No, I agree. For discussion, let's put them together.
All right, so this is for Lehigh Park Apartments 2. This is the one, obviously near Florendon Drive, in the existing one. As part of the approval process, we have to create a remainder of the water district, or extend the water district, and also the sanitary sewer district as well. So it's something we normally do with these types of projects. It'll just put them into the new districts. But we have to call for the public hearing and go through that process.
Okay. And then as part of that, then they would be required to, obviously pay the fees associated with that district on their bills, correct?
That's correct, Steve.
So question, do we want to have those, call those also for the 6th? Is there any reason not to do them together? Maybe put those ones on the agenda first on the 6th? Or do you want to just have them on the 8th? There is at least 1 or 2 very vocal neighbors of the Lehigh Valley project, who I'm sure will be there for, well, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I would be surprised if they were not there to talk about this. They've been closely monitoring the construction as it's been happening over there. So that's why I was thinking that we might want to hold this also on the July 6th at 6 p.m.
Yeah. That way we
That way
can
if-
allow for in-person.
That way, if he wants to be there in person, he can be there in person.
Yeah.
If he wants to do it virtually, he can do it virtually. Does that make sense? Does that work for you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
July 6th.
Well,
Yep.
again, these ones should go fairly fast, although, like I said, there'll probably one or 2 people talking about the project itself.
Right.
Although again, I look at this stuff as more pro forma. You can't approve of housing basically apartments and then say, no, but you can't hook up to water or sewer.
Shouldn't that have been done?
It's,
Or is that the way they always do it?
that's the way it always is done. That's why I say it's kind of
Yeah.
formal almost, but
It seems,
the issue has to do with in terms of, go ahead, Chris, are you gonna say something?
No, I was gonna say, Steve, yeah, typically these things are done anywhere during the design process like this, but yeah, it's not uncommon to do it at this stage. It's more of a housekeeping item than anything else.
Right. Typically, when it comes up in the discussions, we ask, are they gonna be hooked up to water and sewer? And we say yes, and it's in which district are they added to? We do have some sewer districts, I think, but to my knowledge, we only have 1 water district, or all the sewers extensions as well.
Right, all the sewers are extensions as well, same as the water.
Okay. Any other questions on that?
Nope.
Becky, you want to
Right,
get rid of
thank you.
some? What's that, Chris?
Oh, I just said thank you.
Thank you. Number 8, Becky wants to get rid of some obsolete town records.
Yeah, so once a year I go through and check all the boxes that have met their retention schedule set by the New York State Archives MU1 schedule that we've adopted. This is basically just one last double check. Each department's reviewed it, and this is just one last little bit of oversight before we get rid of any town records for you guys to look at it, review it before it officially hits the shredder.
Okay. Not that beautiful penmanship, I hope.
Oh, no, those are permanent. Those beautiful books will never leave this building.
All right. There was this, what was that book?
That's our 1907 marriage record book. That's
It
that's the earliest marriage records that we have here at the town.
right.
Interesting.
Whoever the,
Penmanship was good, huh?
oh my, it was artful. I mean, you should have seen the handwriting. It was,
It is a lost art.
it was so uniform, and like then the capital letters, the initial letters were quite flowery. They weren't, you know, we're not talking full on script, but it was, yeah, it's definitely a lost art. Anyway, I will also, as long as I've already derailed a little bit, I'll have a side note that Becky brought me this wonderfully interesting document today to sign, and that is that submitted the tax collection is done, so.
Hey.
Any other questions on the records?
No.
And let's go right into Becky's, keep your microphone hot, 284 Brooks Road.
Oh, boy, I don't know if this is a me topic or a Tina topic, but
Her name's
essentially,
next to it. I don't know if Tina's on.
oh, Tina is on. I don't know if she wanted to speak about this, but essentially 284 Brooks Road, it was on hold. If you remember, we had the public hearing once before and it was closed. And a resident had some comments about the district that it was going to be designated into, and the Historic Site Committee went back, thought about it, and took those thoughts into consideration, and are no longer going to put it into a district. They still want to designate 284 Brooks Road as a historic site, and they've attached a letter with all of the information, a lot of it from our friend Tina. Basically talking about the significance of why it should be designated.
And I think it was also, you know, there was a question in terms of the district it was going into, whether it fit. So this way, but we've actually, Tina, correct me where I stray, we've kind of moved away from districts other than the 2 hamlets, in that we are doing them more individually, or, you know, if you will, collection. But the thing that with the district is that, excuse me, so for instance, the cobblestones are distributed all across town. So it's really hard to call it a district, but you know, we have, whether you want to call it the series, I don't know if you have a real term for it, Tina, but essentially, you know, we do have all the historic cobblestones. And so, you know, some of the discussion at the public hearing was what classification should be used for this historic property. So I believe that is some of the stuff that they clarified. Did you want to chime in?
That's correct. And but because the property is representational of the houses that were built after World War II and during the 50s and 60s, and this was the growth of the suburbs around the city of Rochester, the committee would like to have this designated as a historic site because it has not been altered since it was built in, 1956. And many of those properties from the 50s and 60s now have alterations such as vinyl siding or, you know, additions on the front or the back of the homes. And in some cases, these homes have been taken down and different houses with different designs have been placed on those lots. So it's really time for the committee to start to collect a few of these houses so that we have a representation of this style of architecture going forward.
So sort of the post-war era?
Correct.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions for Tina?
Is the property owner, is the property owner fully aware of the historic designation?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
She's actually filling the spot on our committee while the person is one of the other members. She had been on the committee, was going to step down. One of the committee members had a tour of active duty, so I asked Kitty if she would fill in while he's on active duty.
I see.
So she is actually serving on the committee. So.
Okay, great.
So just again, from a bookkeeping note, the public hearing was closed, but we'll just do it through, anyone is welcome to offer public comment as per we do on any subject during the discussion of the resolution itself. So whereas the public hearing has been officially closed, we are still hearing public comment. And obviously if there is something significant offered that we think needs to go back to the Historic Site Committee, then we can table the decision. I'm not saying that there's going to be, I'm just pointing out for people who say, oh, well, then it's a done deal. It's not. As we saw last week, we tabled a resolution because actually we tabled two, one resolution, one public hearing, because there were a number of questions and changes that came up. So, any other questions? Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Becky. Linda, you want to discuss deposit rates?
Right. I sent an email out last week. We had a CD at Canandaigua National Bank that was maturing today. It was earning 0.75% interest.
Great.
The renewal CD, if I rolled it over there, a 30, 60, and 90-day were all at the same rate, 0.25%. Another rate that I had from another bank was less than that. So per the email I'd sent, I rolled it over for 30 days while I go out and try to look for something that'll pay a little more than that. About 5.75 million rolled over, and we had earned about $10,881 in interest in those 90 days.
Great job.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you very much. Sarah, you were going to give us an update on the Board of Assessment review hearings?
Yeah, we've had quite a few board members just pop their head in and see how things are going. So I thought I'd do a blanket update. We obviously got an influx of applications on grievance day. So we've been working through, seeing if they want to be a phone appointment or a mail-in application. And so we've got pretty much everything scheduled. The last phone hearing date is going to be on the 15th. And hopefully we'll have all the mail-ins completed by the end of the 19th. So we should be all set to have our final rollout by July 1st.
Great.
Yep. So we've been doing our hearings. Obviously we use Zoom to conduct the meetings, but we've been broadcasting on either YouTube or Facebook. We've had a really positive response from everyone that's utilized that service, and all the board members have liked it as well. So it's been great being able to be in contact with the residents to hear them out on, how they describe their property. So everything's been going great.
Sounds good. Any other questions, comments?
No.
Great job.
Thank you, Sarah. Tablets, laptops. Andrew.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Andrew Stewart, Director of Information Technology. So I know that the board is in desperate need for new tablets. This was actually pretty evident today with some tablets not working. So I did put together a list of some options for you guys. They're in the attached workshop draft. So basically, I've divided this up into tablet options and laptop options. The tablets, the first option is a Galaxy Tab S6 Lite. It's a 10-inch tablet. So it's a little bigger than what you guys currently have.
Yeah.
It's their newest model, basically. So you won't have a lot of the issues that you guys are currently having. It's a faster processor. So it should handle things like Outlook and browsers. And it also includes a pen. And it has a pretty decent resolution. It's like 2000 by 1200. So it's a lot of pixels in there. I've included a cover for the tablet, and there's also a cover with a keyboard if you guys want that option. The second option is a Galaxy Tab A. It's slightly cheaper. It's not as nice as the first option, but it should get the job done. So if we do want to save a little money, we can go with this option. It also has also comes with either the cover, just a normal case cover, or we can get it with the keyboard. And below that is laptops. So I've got two options here. One is a Asus VivoBook. It's a 15.6 inch display. It has it has 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of SSD. It's an i3 processor, so it's one of the better processors that Intel makes. It's also 10th generation, so this is the newest stuff. It's about 3.7 pounds, so it's not a very heavy laptop at all. It's I want to say the better of the two options I have here. The second option is an HP Notebook 14. I think there might be a typo in there. And that's also a 15 point, also has a 15.6 inch screen, but it's a touch screen, which can be nice if you guys want to be able to draw on the screen or anything like that. I don't know if this actually comes with a pen, but we can probably get a pen for it. It has a slightly less resolution, so it's not as crisp as the VivoBook, but it's slightly cheaper. So trade off. It is 4.4 pounds, so it's slightly heavier. But I mean, both of these notebooks will run your standard Windows apps. So you'll get pretty decent performance from both of these. So there's not any big sacrifices here. I did include a laptop bag, pretty standard laptop bag, but we could, depending on your preference, we could get something else, something more urban or stylish. So those are the options. Any questions so far?
No, thank you for giving us these options.
Yeah. I mean, you have, you know, with the tablets, you're going to get a little bit more, it's going to have more battery life. So that's something to consider. But with the laptops, you'll be able to run more applications. You know, you can utilize the Microsoft Store and also run standard applications. So, you know, but of course their battery life won't be, you know, as good. You're probably talking about 7 or 8 hours with a laptop and more like 10 or 11 hours with a tablet. I'm not sure if you're getting that out of the current tablets now, but that's what it's supposed to be.
Steve talked less than if we only can get 7 hours out of it.
I don't think I've gone 7 hours, although that's their theory, theoretical. After a year's use, you're probably down to 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see.
But you can also control that by changing your brightness, that type of stuff.
Well, it's good that you have keyboards with each of the options. That's good too.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
What were you guys thinking?
This is the first I've seen this.
Okay.
I like the tablet option. I'm the first tablet option personally.
I like a little bigger screen.
It is a bigger screen. It's a,
Right.
10.4 inches as opposed to our little 8-inch screens.
Right.
But definitely a keyboard. I mean, that's I'm trying to.
Oh, understood.
I'm better with, I prefer the tablet.
A lot easier to take around the tablet.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about when we were talking about the laptop, that,
Yeah.
you know,
Those are bulky.
if you're doing a ton of, you know, if you're doing things like creating PowerPoints and Excel spreadsheets and a ton of that stuff, then you typically want that additional capability of the laptop. But for, you know, what we're generally using them for as a board standpoint, to me, the tablets make a lot more sense. But I agree that the keyboard, because one of the things we do a lot of, and that is emails.
Right.
It's a lot more efficient and a lot less prone to typos.
Yep.
If I'm doing the keyboards.
I like the stylus. That's good too.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So we'll write it up for tablet option 1 with the keyboard. And, you know, think about it, look this stuff over. If you've changed your mind, let us know, but that's how we'll write it up.
Everybody agreeable to that?
I'm good.
I'm good with that.
Sounds right to
Mike?
me.
Does it have
Sounds good to me.
do they have a camera on it for the Zoom? I see it.
Yep.
It says
Yes.
back camera. Is there-
It's front
oh,
and
back. Front and
Okay, yeah,
back
never
camera.
mind, I was looking at the
Mhm.
wrong-
So behave yourself. Front and back.
Okay?
Just out of curiosity, do some of the other boards like planning and zoning board, are they also able to utilize tablets?
So we're taking a look at moving some of those boards to paperless.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought is, I'm gonna take mine and offer it for folks to try it, to see if they can use it paperless. So some of where you get into issue is when I'm looking at plans,
Right.
a 10-inch screen is not great for looking at plans.
Right.
If I have to just look at one thing or other, that's okay. But, you know, however, with that said, they might be fine for just the initial review. And then we have, instead of printing out one copy for everybody on the board, there's one printed copy to have at the workshop meeting of that board, so that they can go over it, and otherwise they get the application paperless, and we save a lot of printing, save some trees, because
Bluetooth projector.
we kill a lot of trees every meeting.
And especially with zoning board, you don't have all the files, even though you still check them out, you know, you still want to check them out, go through them. I always, it's just like, what a waste of paper.
Right.
Because at the end of the night, I'm like, what do you do with it? Well, shred it, get rid of it.
Yeah,
Right.
recycle and that's that, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so we definitely want to take a look at that. So my thought is, like I said, I would loan people mine initially. In fact, I probably won't even set mine up initially. I'll just we'll set it up as a loaner initially, just so that people can try it out and we can see, does that make sense? And then basically we would have to go through and do a cost analysis as to whether we can do that for the boards. But, you know, again, printouts aren't cheap. Now, granted, they're a lot of times, if not always, they're billed back to the, I don't know about zoning board, whether that's billed back or if that's built into the application fees, but a lot of that stuff is, it's at the cost of the applicant to print out. But, you know, again, just from an ecological standpoint, and the other thing that happens too is invariably someone comes in and says, oh, I need to make a correction.
Right.
I can always, you know, better chance of getting the latest if I've got it electronically than if I've got it in hard copy. So, okay, we'll take a look at that. But like I said, we'll write the resolution up for Wednesday using tablet option 1 with our keyboard. Any other questions on that?
Oh, thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so for the reverse parade.
Okay, so for the reverse parade, I thought it'd be nice just to give an update, since this will be the only workshop we have up until the event, which is scheduled for Saturday, June 27th from 10 a.m. until noon. That is confirmed. We understand that the Rush Henrietta senior class will be having some commencement ceremonies, but there should be a very small impact on our event with those participating. We've got so far 35 different locations confirmed. Now, 9 of those locations are actually all of the schools that will be participating. So school staff will be coming out, creating a display to say hello to each of their students.
By the way, location, he means the performance locations along the parade route.
And how many schools was there? I didn't catch that.
9.
9, okay. Thank you.
So the other 26 locations are all participants that we've had in our typical Memorial Day parade, some of which include Towpath Volunteers, Fife and Drum, Excelsior Brigade, Fife and Drum, the Rochester Scottish Pipes and Drums, the Fire District, CHS, RIT Ambulance, our youth asset team, the public library, Airplay Jugglers, Grease Paint Alley Clowns. So a lot of the organizations that we've had march in our parade will be participating in this event as well. They're excited about it. Some of them are volunteering their time, which have been paid in the past, but others have lowered their cost for this. And honestly, there's a few that are keeping the price the same. So originally, when we were looking at spending approximately $4,500 for the reverse parade displays, we are now looking at around $3,875. And we still have a few more confirmations coming in. So we're going to be right around that number. Our budget looks pretty good for what was approved. We are going to be doing a banner saying congratulations to the Antoinette Brown Blackwell Scholarship winners. We're also going to be recognizing our Youth Hall of Fame inductees from this year. Each one of them will have their own picture on a display sign along the parade route. We have spoken with Jim Young, the supervisor, and I. He is working out a proposal, and that will include approximately 50 sequences. He presented a budget of $9,500. Now, the 50 sequences is on the high end. He may not use all of those sequences, and he's only going to bill us for what he does. Now, each sequence would be approximately 45 seconds. That's kind of where we're at now, and each sequence would then go off every 5 minutes. So again, depending on traffic and how many people we have going, will determine how much is used of that. So we're right at our budget where we need to be. Does anyone have any questions about the reverse parade so far? I just kind of wanted to keep the board apprised of all of those plans prior to the actual event.
I think it was actually every 3 minutes. gets you to 50.
I have a question, Rob Barley. Well, I guess it's really a request. Can we keep to our budget, not go over? That's my request. There's a lot of acts. I'm glad to see that they're going to have photos for the Hall of Fame members too. Will we be able to see this fireworks in the daytime?
So we're going to do a test. He's offered to come in and do a test run.
Okay.
We'll try to pick a time whenever you guys can all be there and make that decision.
That's a great idea.
So we're talking about the fountains, flares, just like you can see flares in the daytime. You can see it. Are they more spectacular at night? No question. But you will still be able to see them. These are, again, like Roman candles, fountains, sprays, you know, he'll have some pictures of what they are. But again, he's offered to bring one of them here and that we would just do it in the daytime.
That'd be great.
We asked him to minimize the amount of, some of them have minor percussion at the end. It's not, they're not the, you know, the flash bang type ones, but in other words, because like some of them are more like Roman candles, they shoot up. They're not mortars, but they shoot up a little and spray. Those do have, or like they sizzle and pop.
Mm-hmm.
But we've asked them to keep the noise level down. So because, you know, if we're going for 2.5 hours, we don't want to disturb, especially the animals who can't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So, but obviously compared to something like the mortars, it's a whole lot less noise.
The only thing I got thinking about after the last meeting, we talked about this, was the smoke created, because I know when I've been to like Frontier Field, right, and they have, you know, those ground ones do cause smoke, and you don't want it blowing over to the other displays, right? For those folks. So I think when we,
we'll pay attention to it.
I think that's a great idea though, to have a dry run and see how it looks.
So as far as the budget, Rob, we'd originally, if I remember the numbers correctly, we'd had 5,000 for the acts and 10,000 for the fireworks. Both of those are actually under it. So we're at 3875, pushing 4,000. So we're 1,000 under that. And again, the fireworks he was at 9K something, and we had budgeted 10. So we are under budget, not just on budget.
Well, he had mentioned that some acts might come in. I just don't want to be over budget.
That's fine.
Yeah.
No.
And
We take our not to exceed very seriously.
absolutely. Like I mentioned today, we did start our registration. This is for Rush Henrietta School District residents only. And we are requiring the registration so that when the participants want to come into the park, we're going to be checking for that receipt either on electronic tablet or cell phone or the actual paper receipt. So that's what we're going to be looking for. And that way we also have a gauge of how many people we're expecting. Currently we have about 20 drivers that have registered. So we're requiring driver registration only. And on the receipt, for after somebody registers, we list all of the rules for the parade as well, what to do, what they cannot do, the 5 mile per hour speed limit that we're going to be enforcing. So,
and also no stopping, right? I mean, there's going to be, don't get me wrong, if you get some compressions, the point is we don't want people stopping, get out, take a photograph, anything like that. There's no getting out of your vehicle. And one of the things we've saying to all the parents of the scholars whose pictures are going to be there, we will have an opportunity for them after the parade is over to come back, get their picture taken next to the picture, and then they're actually going to get to take it home. But the idea is, you know, we'll make sure we have that time after the parade is over so that they can come and get their picture done. Or I'd even be fine with setting up a time beforehand. They could get their picture done as well, whichever they prefer, as long as they're, in other words, if the parade starts at 10, it would be, you know, from 8 to 9, they could come and get their picture taken.
Are we letting people know that there might be fireworks, or that there may be I'm just thinking small children and people love to stick their dogs in the car?
Yeah, when we've solidified that, that's going out. We've talked about that. Some of the stuff is still to be determined, but.
So now my question is, how would one register? And what if they come in a different car, or if someone shows up and they're not registered? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna take someone on the line that's registered, that's not registered?
Well, it's when you essentially turn on to Minerva Campbell. So again, we'll handle that if we can determine their status as a Henrietta resident. We'll have big signs up. It's largely going to be about advertising this. And again, the whole point is we're not going to be able to service all of Monroe County. And as we're going to be the only event going on, and potentially the only event in all of Monroe County with fireworks, granted they're only ground-based, but still, we're trying to reserve this for our residents. And because we're doing some of the stuff with the school, we decided to include the other residents inside the school district, which again, from a percentage standpoint is very small. The vast majority of all the residents are in Henrietta inside the school district, but that's what we're doing.
Policing an event like this can be problematic.
Understood, but it gets worse if I don't. Because then we have basically a ton of residents who I guarantee you would get shut out because we'd see massive crowds from elsewhere.
So Rob, you asked about how to register.
Yes.
The only way we're accepting registration right now is through our online registration. So any Rush Henrietta resident should go to our website and register online.
That's the town hall website, not the recreation center?
It's
They're one and the same now.
I'm saying now? Okay.
Yeah, they're basically tied together. When you get there, there is one portion of the rec pages that is handled by a service, and it automatically takes the service. Just like if you go into the town code through our website, it takes you to Eco 360 with a means to get back. So, but yeah, if you go through our town website and you click on recreation, what we will do is we haven't figured out which of those 4 across the bottom. We'll bump one of those and make it the for the parade, announcing the parade and registering for it. So it'll be all that page there.
just for the minutes, the actual website, the direct link is parksandrecreation.henrietta.org.
Do we have a guesstimate of how long it will take to get through, and how many cars will be able to go through?
So when I drove it, what did I say, Jason? Do you remember?
About 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah. So, and but then when you look at how many cars can fit in there concurrently, it's a lot. So I haven't tried to model that. I just know it's a lot, but we could. I know, but what I'll do is I can get a distance of I'll actually get the linear distance of the parade route, and we'll go from there. Yep. Yeah, I would say 30 feet, because you're probably looking at 20. In other words, average car is 20 feet, plus or minus, and then figure 10-foot gap. Just because people are going to be distracted, they're not going to want to be close on the heels of the person in front of them. In fact, we don't want them close on the heels, because we don't want them running. One of the other things that the plan is that we're going to have a number of volunteers along the way whose job it is. In fact, we're probably, Jason, want to look at buying a number of whistles if we don't have them. So that basically, in other words, if they see somebody who's not paying attention and they're getting close to the car in front of them, they blow the whistle to alert them.
The vehicles will probably want to pause at certain places and things too.
They will, and again, same thing, then they'll use those whistles to, catch the attention of the people, pause to say, hey, come on, move along. So I just want them to have an audible signaling device. We might also get them a flag or something to wave, but.
Just don't give Jason a bullhorn.
Air horns.
Air horn.
Keep it moving.
I think we do actually have an air horn. I mean, we've had one in the past anyway. I don't know if it was a rental, but
I like the idea of whistles. That's a good idea, Steve.
yeah. And if nothing else, then when we're all done with them, we clean them and we've got extras for our referees.
Camp counselors.
Yeah.
There you go,
That's what I
and
was
counselors.
thinking. I'm
We've
like,
got hundreds of whistles already.
Any questions on reverse parade?
Just one question. We got a resident doesn't sign up for it. We know they're Henrietta residents, they're in line. What do we do?
Come on in.
Rob at the entrance to be able to deal with it.
You know they're a resident. so-
I understand. We'll figure it out. I'm not worried about that.
Right.
We've had that with, the food link distribution, you're supposed to be registered. They still, the thing is you don't want to advertise that because then nobody registers. And, but again, the people who are going to be monitoring that know how to deal with that.
I just want to see this blow up in our face, that's all. I think it's gonna be a good time though. I have concerns.
Okay, summer concert series.
So just kind of wanted to have a brief discussion about this summer's concert series schedule, kind of gauge where the board is with some of those events that are scheduled to begin July 17th. We've got 5 concerts scheduled running through July into August, ending on Saturday, August 29th. Now, we're hoping that phase 4 of the reopening plan is happening by July 17th. That's the first concert, which is Keys to the Caddy. And I'm just looking for some feedback from the board as to if this is something we should continue doing socially distanced safely, or should we start informing our vendors and bands that we are canceling. I know that other towns have canceled their June concerts. We don't have any June concerts, but most of them that I've spoken with, the few that do summer concert series, are continuing at this time. They have not canceled for July or August.
There was one town that had canceled and they are now considering uncanceling.
That's right. And I sent an attachment with the budget just so you can kind of see how much we're talking about. The total for, if we were to do all of the concerts, is $6,030.
Well, plus the porta potties, there's a few other, right?
That's correct, Steve. Yep. And the licensing to do the concerts.
And the first one starts what date, Jason?
July 17th is Keys to the Caddy.
Are they weekly after that?
No, the next one would be Friday, July 31st. That's Mr. Mustard.
They're roughly every 2 weeks, right?
Somewhere around there, yeah. And then Sunday, August 9th, Friday, August 21st, and then ending on Saturday, August 29th.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, you still got over a month for the first one. I just think we still need to do stuff like this for people. I just think people need to get out.
So do we have a plan though to control the number of people or anything? I mean, can we do like a registration process or anything like that too, so we can have an idea as to how many plan to attend?
Please don't.
No, you don't like that idea?
No.
Jason, how many people normally come to these?
Yeah.
I know like
Just not-
some of these, I know Jumbo Shrimp is popular. I've gone and seen them before, so I know some of them are a little more popular. But what do you normally get people-wise?
So again, depending on the act, it could be anywhere from 50 people to 500 people. For these particular acts, and given the circumstances, I would safely estimate that we would get up to 100 people, possibly more. And that space by the amphitheater is very large. We've got a lot of space to be able to spread out and have a nice view. The problem with doing a registration is because we get people that come in from all different areas of the park that they're able to park their vehicles at.
Yeah, sometimes the registration doesn't necessarily need to be monitored, but just having the facts that there is a registration, people just sort of naturally, don't go to something when there's a registration, or they do go if they're registered. It's just to get ahead, just to get a ballpark figure. Can we, I'm going to recommend that maybe we want to budget in being able to provide hand sanitizing stations and masks.
Well, it just so happens that we have some.
Lots of
New
hand
York State-
sanitizer.
The mask left over.
We still have some. Oh, absolutely. We have both.
And we could probably get extra hand sanitizer.
We could probably get extra hand sanitizer. So.
I can
What-
see registration going both ways, because I think sometimes when people register for an event, they feel they need to come.
Mhm.
Where sometimes if you're not registered for it, you may say, well, let's go, and then you may have a picnic that day or something come up. I'm just too tired, I don't feel like going. Whereas if you're registered, you feel like you need to go. I know,
If we're not going to enforce it, it's.
yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I disagree. I think that a registration just kind of offers a self-selection, and it gives you a ballpark figure, but that's just my opinion.
Did we want to vote on whether we're doing a registration, just an informal vote? A lot of people feel.
You guys can vote on it if you want, go ahead.
Yeah, it's okay.
I always said I'm not for it if they're not going to enforce it. Not for the registration.
I just look at right now with the, especially if we're in the middle of the phase 4 restart, the amount of stuff that the rec staff is going to have to be juggling as they get the programs underway and get the courts opened up, and with everything else, I just don't know that I'd want to put that layer of responsibility on them, especially since we already have one registration going for the reverse parade.
That's fine.
Which again, that one I think is needed because I think the demand is going to be high and we have a limited amount of time to get all of our residents who want to attend through that. I think it's important. And one of the things we are definitely going to encourage is people to carpool that, who are related so that they're, we don't want to obviously have people who otherwise wouldn't be in close proximity to each other to do so, but those who live together come in one vehicle, not multiple vehicles.
I've just been, in the past, Jason, I think I even mentioned to you, I've been to these concert series over the years, and I'm just surprised how sometimes they're hit and miss.
Right.
You would expect you got a real good band, and all of a sudden you don't have very many people, and it's just.
Some of it's weather, some of it's what else is going on. There's so many factors that play into it.
I believe it was last year that I think it was one of the days that was super, super hot.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a good turnout.
Right.
But yeah, you just never know. You just never know on these.
The nice thing is with the way that's set up with the hill behind it, you can spread out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we can even take a look at is, do we have some auxiliary amplifiers further out to get sound, spread further? I've got a KB 500 amp that we could bring in for that purpose. Maybe look at a couple others just to basically, so that people who want to sit on the hill and listen to the music away from the crowds could do so too.
I've sat up there before. You can hear it really well up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can.
We don't want you bringing your equipment and getting it messed up. Leave that stuff.
There will be no issue hearing the music when it's played in the park.
Okay.
One quick reminder to the town board, if I could.
Powered up my KB5. Actually, it was when Hayden was first playing electric guitar. I let him hook up to the KB 500, and we didn't do that too often. He's really talented, but it's really loud.
Right.
Just a quick reminder to the town board, we have our Food Link event this Thursday, starting at 10 a.m. at the rec center. If any of you are looking to volunteer, please get a hold of us so we can make arrangements and know if you're planning to help out or not, please.
What time is that?
10 a.m.,
10
Yeah,
a.m.?
it starts at 10, but staff show up at 9.
9 o'clock.
Okay.
I'll be there, Jason.
Yeah, just send me an email if you could confirm if you're undecided at this point.
Okay.
You want me to reach out to the folks involved in the primary? I'm sure they'll volunteer, but then the question is, do they slow the lines down too much trying to talk?
We have plenty of help, but certainly if town board members want to come along and lend a hand, we welcome that.
Okay. No town board members are in those aforementioned primaries, so. Not the real primaries. Okay. Anything else for Jason?
Thanks, Mr. Cooler.
Thank you.
Thank you.
15, personnel items.
Hi, so we have Anita is working really hard getting the seasonal folks to run the summer camp program. She's got quite a few, so I added to the resolution today when she brought that over to me. Still is short some to fill the rooms that we're planning, although we haven't opened that up for registration yet, so that'll determine that. Some seasonal DPW folks for the additional mowing and et cetera that we try to keep up with every year. And then, so sorry, Kevin, Becky has backfilled her deputy town clerk position.
Still no sign of a fire marshal yet.
We have an interview on Wednesday.
Okay.
Any other questions on that?
No.
Rob, looks like you're up for bills payable.
Yes, sir. Oh, there's Kevin. He didn't have a comment, but he's
Well,
here.
I was wondering if Becky can help me with the interview process. She seems to know how to do it.
I'm sorry, Kevin, I was afraid to tell you.
Okay, and then minutes.
I make a motion to approve.
I will second for the minutes of the town board workshop meeting.
May 22nd, 2020.
Any comments?
No.
I've already made mine online and they are incorporated. Hearing no further comments, please call a roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Boltner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Not it.
Time's up.
By the way, do you get any Legos for the placement of that bag during these meetings? I do notice, a bunch of Legos around the office, although it has
You
to
might
do-
all want that back.
might
to
have
play
something to
with.
do with where particular spouse works.
That's a happening place.
Yeah,
At the Lego
that's why
store.
there's all the stuff there.
Oh, we didn't know that. We're gonna be brown nosing up to you now.
He still works there, right?
Not anymore, no.
Oh,
Oh.
now is that true, or you just don't want to be
Yeah,
brown nosed?
no, it is true. It is true.
Oh, sorry, so you're too
But
late.
that doesn't mean that we don't have a boatload of Lego stuff.
Okay, anything else? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Hearing no objections, meeting adjourned.
Wow.